Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, May 5th meeting of the Town of Richmond Selectboard. Would anybody like to make any public comment on anything not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I would like to briefly make a mention. Can I have sharing ability? All right, stand by.
All set.
You're all invited to the annual meeting of the Mount Mansfield Community TV tomorrow, May 6th, at the library at 5:30 p.m. It's going to be updates about what the station has been up to and a presentation on the role community media plays in local democracy. So again, that is 5:30 p.m. tomorrow across the street at the library. There will be snacks. Any other public comment waiting to happen? So let's go ahead and get going. I meant to share that, but then I didn't. Okay, so the first, are there additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Seeing none. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the agenda. Our first item on the agenda is an update on the helicopter flood mitigation scheduled for 1 hour window between May 7th and 9th. Josh, if you could briefly.
Sure. This is in relation to, or this is for the flood mitigation study. It was initially going to be a drone flight, but they're going to pair it up with the helicopter flight that they have over in Barrie. I think there's some cost savings and some operational efficiencies there. So sometime between May 7th, 8th, and 9th, it'll be about a 1 hour flight. It'll start in the Jonesville end of town and basically travel the river up through the overpass with I-89. They'll fly about 380 feet off the ground at a speed of about 28 knots. So when you see a helicopter out there later this week, that is what it's for.
Okay, our next item on the agenda. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I just heard about that today.
Okay.
And I have been working with friends of Winooski for years, and I have a ways behind my house where there was never any valley or gutter or anything. It's now about 300 feet long and 12 feet deep. All that material ends up in the Winooski River. I'd love to do something about it, and if I'd like to see if they can fly over that. They're just doing the straight.
Yeah, they've got a scope of work already.
Right.
Sorry. But if you connect with me later, we might have some programs that it can fit into. We'll find out. But talk to me offline.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the conservation committee too.
Okay. Yeah.
So is Lynn still doing the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so Lynn, that was Jack Lynn who was speaking just now. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a public hearing. Consider approving amendments to the following sections of the Richmond zoning regulation. Section 3.9, Jolina Court zoning district. Section 5.12, planned unit development. Section 6.15, residential density bonus program, and section 6.16, affordable housing development. The process is that we have to open the hearing to the public, and then we will hear from Planning Commission Chair Virginia Clark and Zoning Director Keith Oborn. We will have time for questions, comments, concerns, and then we will need to close the hearing and decide whether we wish to act. So first things first, would anybody like to make the motion to open the hearing?
Jay, I move to open the public hearing for consideration of amendments to the following sections of the Richmond zoning regulations, section 3.9, Jolina Court zoning district, section 5.12, planned unit development, section 6.15, residential density bonus program, and section 6.16, affordable housing development.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin.
Jay, this is David. I'll second. David.
Okay, David beat you to it. Okay. So we have a motion to open the public hearing for consideration of the amendments as mentioned before. Any discussion before we vote? Didn't think you're good. Let's go ahead and vote. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, aye.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. The hearing is open. Here's yours.
Hey, well, good evening, everyone. Sorry about my back being to you, but glad we are here. So I'll give you a very short description of what we're going to talk about in case people aren't aware. In the memo that was in the packet for this evening, there is a short description, a brief description of what we're talking about, but I'll go over it once really quickly. So we're talking about the Jolina Court zoning district, which is, as most people know, right across the street from the grocery store. And there are two parcels in that district. The larger parcel is the Creamery project, which is, has been developed by Buttermilk developers that we have here, right? And then there's this very small parcel that's the Richmond Community Kitchen. Those are the only two parcels in the Jolina Court zoning district. Building 1 has been built, and there are 14 residential units, and the ground floor is commercial space. The reason that we established that zoning is to allow for there to be growth in the commercial part of the village. To have a walkable community, we felt you should have something to walk to. So that was the point of having that commercial space there on the ground floor of building 1. Buttermilk developer would now like to get started on building number 2, which was always in the plan. And this building will be sort of to the back of building number 1. The planning commission has worked for over a year to try to come to some conclusion about what the best way to change this zoning would be to help this project to advance. So the developer came to us and they had 2 requests. One was to not be required to have commercial space on the ground floor. Commercial real estate is in trouble. There's not a lot of need in the villages for bricks and mortar commercial space. It's very difficult to keep it filled. It's difficult to get financing for a mixed-use project. In more urban areas, even like Williston, there's still demand for this kind of housing. This is a village, traditional village type of housing. Anyway, they would like us to remove the ground floor commercial requirement and to increase the number of units that they are allowed to build. Right now, that number is 31. That's based off our current zoning, which allows a total of 45 units on the 3 acres of this parcel that is developable. And they would like to increase that number, both for financial reasons and also to increase the housing supply in Richmond. So those are the 2 questions that the planning commission had before us. The commercial requirements seem to be fairly easy to resolve. Most of the planning commissioners felt that the housing need was greater now, the commercial need was less. Let's go ahead and remove the commercial requirement on the ground floor of building number 2. We did talk at some length about whether to remove it also in building 1. So building 1 still has a presence on Bridge Street. There's a part of that building 1 that isn't right on Bridge Street. Could we just remove that and leave the Bridge Street portion? We ended up deciding to leave the commercial requirement entirely in building 1, as was in their original plan. So the second question is the density question. How many units should we allow? The original zoning, as I said, allows 31 new units. And our options that we considered at great length and really couldn't come to any decisive conclusion about. We were stalemated for a number of months because there are 2 goods here, 2 things that are good that are being presented. One is if we
Here is failure to communicate.
Hey, Richmond Selectboard meeting, we tried switching the camera angle, we lost all sound.
Oh, we got it back.
Got it back.
Oh,
Sound check.
apparently we got the sound back, but we're showing
Okay.
their backs, if you can switch it to showing their fronts.
But how do we automatically switch?
Okay, thanks.
Oh, somebody's got it. They got the front view. We got sound back up.
Okay.
I think we're good to go.
All good?
See, you call the repairman and it all suddenly worked.
Yes.
That'll be two.
Okay, so I think they missed the last 2 minutes. Where were they? So the last 2 minutes, we spent 1:50 of that trying to fix the audio. So I don't think you missed too much. Maybe go back to,
Sure, yeah. So on point number one about the commercial space. We had to kind of give up the idea that we were gonna have this traditional village building with the commercial on the ground floor and the residential above, because there isn't anyone who wants to use that commercial space, apparently. So we gave that up and felt that that was possible to remove the commercial. The density question was different. The possibilities are increasing the density just across the board, more units, more housing. Okay. A second option would be to increase the density, but also receive some additional benefits besides just having more housing. So there was a significant portion of the planning commission that felt that it was desirable to try for affordable housing, for instance, which is another different benefit, but besides more housing, to possibly have some senior units, which our housing study had showed was requested, needed in Richmond, and possibly have more parking, which is also needed in the village. So, or we could just not increase the density. So what we ended up doing was kind of making a compromise among these issues where we did allow there to be more density by creating a residential density bonus program whereby density above the allowed density could be achieved if some of those units or the parking spaces met some of our other needs. So this has been a valuable piece of property in the middle of our village center. And there aren't a lot of other to scale properties that some of these other goals could be achieved with. So this was our conflict. We spent a long time trying to resolve this conflict. There are goods on both sides. And so we felt that it was time to move it along. We didn't have as much community participation as we would have liked at the planning commission level. So we became unsure of what the community wanted. Do we want just more housing? Do we want these special bonuses as well? So that's where we are at the moment. We have proposed amending section 3.9, which is the Jolina Court District, to allow for residential density bonus, additional density in this zoning district. The section 5.12 that we're amending is the planned unit development section, which is where resides the requirement that commercial be on the first floor. We are recommending that we remove that we strike that residential uses can be on any floor. And then we put together a town-wide proposal for a residential density bonus program. The final section that we have, section 6.16, is the second new section besides 6.15. And that is really taken straight from Act 47, a new piece of state legislation that states outright, if you have a housing development, which is a development that has 20% of its units are affordable, then you may have additional density and you may go one story above what your housing, what your height limit already is. So this is another avenue that a developer could pursue. They could actually make an affordable housing development that would receive the additional density and the extra height. So those are the 4 sections that we're amending. And I will open the floor to your next.
Okay, let's start with select board, sorry.
You know, my wheels are sort of turning here, going back to the beginning, history when there was conversation about commercial and jobs and stuff. So where we've come from and where we are, as you describe, has been fairly substantially different. Seizing on just one of the elements at the moment, and I think we have a letter in our packet about this. The height restrictions. So we've had members of the fire department say, don't go higher than this height in the past for any building in town without a ladder truck. And so I just want to call the question of what in fact are the limits and where do they come from in terms of height? And how much is aesthetic or zoning and how much is life safety or fire department limitations? I remember conversations years ago about, oh, if we do this, we have to get a ladder truck. Just saying that was the conversation, not saying that that was a true representation of regulation or standards. So,
Well,
that make
as
sense?
far as we understand it, buildings can be much taller than 35 feet without having a ladder truck. You know, there are systems now, there's sprinkler systems, fire safety systems, and Adam can speak to this, but first of all, that legislation that allows it to be one height, one floor higher, 10 feet higher, doesn't even say anything about a number. It
Fair
just says if
Yeah.
you know, anything you've got, it can be higher.
It's just a bonus.
So it's just out in our zoning ordinance and many other zoning ordinances, there is this kind of 3-story accepted 35 feet traditional height. But maybe, Adam, you could talk to us about the actual fire laws.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of opinions on this, but I guess the state's opinion and NFPA's opinion would be that a proper any building that follows NFPA 101 and NFPA 1, which dictate fire safety and life safety. There's no height requirement that's based on the apparatus the fire department has, because there's multiple means of egress, there's sprinkled, there's isolation, there's other construction details that make that unnecessary as a means to rescue people. And those buildings are significantly safer than shorter, older buildings that don't have those features. So there's no, from a fire department standpoint, as far as I'm aware, there's no reason that we would have that height restriction in place. That has been debated, that has been talked about. I think a lot of the information is misguided and incorrect, but that's kind of as a not an architect and not a fire suppression expert, that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, so they do have to meet fire safety requirements and the standards that are out
And
there.
NFPA 1 and NFPA 101 are the gold standard there. The current edition, I think Vermont has adopted 2021, which is a commercial property. This would be held to state permitting requirements, not in addition to the town. So that would be enforced by the state fire marshal. So to be clear, there's multiple regulations that are at play here, and the state enforces that and inspects that accordingly.
And that is on the planning commission's list of things to talk about when we talk about housing and the housing crisis. There's not much land here, there's not much space in our more densely populated core where the infrastructure services are. Maybe going up is a way to go, but we haven't had that discussion yet, community-wide.
Does it seem fair to say, Jay, that density is a function of length, width, and height? I mean, it's volume, right?
You and your big math this.
I mean, because people have expressed concern also about footprints and that kind of thing. And to your point, that if you go higher, you're not changing the footprint, you're changing density through height.
And you're changing possibly the traffic inflow.
Right, so there are implications, but it's not about the footprint.
But our most recent kind of obvious example of impervious surface and stormwater, et cetera, isn't necessarily changed by going up
Exactly.
3, 4, 10 stories.
Yeah.
Traffic obviously is.
Mhm.
Other questions from the board? As you might expect, I and probably other members of the board have been receiving citizen communications from various people. One question that has come up is, why is proposed density so much lower than that of the village downtown district?
Well, I can't fully answer that because I did not participate in the interim zoning that established this 15 units per developable acre. When the first permanent zoning was put in place, I was involved in that, but that number was taken from the interim zoning. Bard, were you on the planning commission? I think Chris might have been. Chris Granda might be able to speak to that. The density of the Bridge Street downtown district, the block, the first block between the traffic light and the traffic lights essentially,
Mhm.
is 24 units per acre, and that is based on the density that it is. The number of people who already live there, and that's where that density came from.
Okay,
So the number, the 15 units per acre, how that was arrived at, I don't really know.
okay, so just continuing on that line of inquiry. I'm very much in favor of trade-offs to get accessible housing for those with, physical limitations.
Mhm.
I'm also in favor of a trade-off to get affordable housing, but I'm wondering if we are underutilizing that space by setting the maximum density comparatively lower than the adjoining village block, because from a standpoint of transportation and having a walkable area, the more residences that we have in a downtown core, the fewer people have to get in a car to go somewhere. That's why subways don't work in Los Angeles and they do work in Boston, because Los Angeles built out, Boston went up. So more residences is not necessarily automatically going to result in lots of cars. Since the neighboring district already is at a certain density, I'm wondering if we couldn't increase proposed density for the Jolina Court district without having a lot of negative consequences. That's just a thought I'd like to throw out there, because that has been the most common refrain in the communications I've gotten from citizens.
That's the base density, the base density.
Yeah.
Well, your original statement was exactly the conflict that the planning commission faced, was more density to utilize the space versus getting some affordable housing, so both these things are desirable. So that is what we are interested in exploring.
Okay.
It would certainly be possible.
So in order to be able to have something to do something to be able to ante into the time, by not letting them go all the way to maximum density and saying, if you do these trade-offs, then you can go higher. That's why we didn't go all the way to the maximum density just out of the box. Because we wanted to be in a position to have something to target about.
Yes, and an alternative solution would be to go to that density with the density bonus number, the number of units you could get through your density bonus, because we didn't even go there.
Okay,
We went to a maximum density instead of 15 units per developable acre. We went to 20
Mhm.
units per developable acre. And we could have gone to 24 units per developable acre with the density bonus or without the density bonus. Some of the members of the planning commission wish to start here with building number 2. In the original proposal, there were going to be 4 buildings. If we got to the maximum density with building 2, then buildings 3 and 4 would have to come back to do this all over again, which I'm sure is not a popular idea with the developer, but that was, I guess, the consideration that we ended up with was, let's start here. We did have people who expressed a the problem with even 31 more units, you know? I mean, this is a cultural thing, I think, partly in this village setting. And it's something that we've faced in all the districts that we've talked about within the water and sewer area, is that people like it just the way it is,
Mhm.
not too dense, you know? And so, the planning commissioners who made the argument that it could be more dense clearly did not have the persuasive argument. So,
I'm gonna call on a gentleman in the audience who's had his hand up.
Yeah, sure. Mark Fossil, I'm actually on the planning commission. Just wanted to catch up a little bit, make sure that some points were clear. There's reference to that 24 units per acre density. And I remember the reason why we put it to 24 units per acre was because there was already 24 units per acre at that spot. So to go any less than that would have still forced anybody doing any work on that property to go through the DRB in order to change a door mount, basically. You know what I mean? There's been so much higher regulation. So that's the only reason why we increased that to 24. I think pre-existing before that point, it was considerably lower.
Mhm.
And everything was out of compliance.
Okay.
So that's why we went to 24, not because we thought that 24 units per acre was a reasonable density for the village. It was already there. We couldn't undo it practically. And so that's why we went there. And then for this property, just want to highlight with this property, you're talking about going to at 15 units an acre right now. 45 units. 45 units, and I know I've said this before, but for people who haven't heard it. 45 units per acre, or 45 units, period, coming off of that intersection. Is almost twice as high as any other street you lean off of Bridge Street.
Mhm.
And it's an intersection right across from really the only sizable commercial development in the village. And that has enough traffic as it is. Then you're looking at the factor that the intersection itself is 30 feet from a railroad crossing. So prime time, people coming home, coming down Bridge Street are going to be trying to turn left across traffic into this shopping center or into this development and back in potential traffic up. There's no light there. There isn't going to be any light there. That the hazards of that are, I think, considerable. So when we decided to say, okay, well, there was a pressure to have it higher than 15. At least certainly my thoughts were, well, I'm not crazy about that. I think 45 is a pretty high number to start with, more than twice any other street. And if we're really gonna go there, then there has to be some sort of offsets to that increased density that are prescribed benefits for the town, things that we want, affordable housing,
Accessible housing.
ADA accessible housing, that type of thing. And so we put those into density bonuses, but honestly, boy, I tell you, it could be interesting what that intersection is gonna look like once this is all built out at 45, if they don't use any of the density bonuses. You know, if we were to zone that so that people with cars couldn't live there, I would have no problem with a walkable downtown. They could hop on the bus, but they'd have to walk to Williston first. That's the only way public transportation is gonna alleviate the traffic that's gonna come out of that development. Other than the few people who will actually be living and working in downtown Richmond. In the very core village center, who might be able to walk to their jobs, but I wouldn't say that's a majority of those 45 units.
Okay. Karen?
Actually, Chris had his hand up first.
Oh, Chris, Bowman,
Oh, thank you.
I didn't see your hand, sorry.
No, that's okay. I think, Mark has covered a lot of it. But as to the earlier question about where that came from originally, I was on the select board at that time. I don't remember the detailed discussion, but I think part of it that had been mentioned here, not just traffic, but parking. So the greater the density in the Jolina Court area, the greater the need for parking to satisfy the needs of the folks who live there. If there are insufficient parking spots for that density, then people need to park elsewhere in the village. And my recollection is that there was some concern about that, given the feeling that there was already a tight parking situation in the village. But I wouldn't say that was a driving concern. I mean, I think where we are at now.
A driving concern.
Yeah, sorry, no pun intended. I think where we are now is this sort of a compromise, as Virginia has said, between pressures, concerns about traffic and parking, which we've heard, and desire to have further commercial development in the village, which certainly was what drove that initial requirement, and the realities of the housing market, which the developers presented, back before ground was broken. I had concerns about that at the time, and unfortunately, since then have only become worse. So, I think what you have in front of you is, as Virginia said, a compromise that comes out of hours and hours of discussion on all of these topics and trying to find a good balance between them. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Carolyn Bounty. I'd like to say a few things. I originally wanted commercial on the first floor years ago when this all started. I totally support it not being commercial anymore. You have two restaurants that are vacant right now in our village. Commercial in our village with the water and sewer rates is, especially restaurants, are like shying away a little bit. So I want to go on record as saying I now support them allowing the full structure to be residential, especially with the housing crisis in the state of Vermont. I support going higher. I support going higher even more than a floor, because if they put parking underneath at the first floor level where that commercial was going to be, it would be ideal to go up. I do not think this is a compromise from what I can tell. I don't think it's enough for what the developer needs with the cost of construction going on and for the added issue with fireproof and all of the fire factors with not having a ladder truck and not needing a ladder truck, all of those pieces. The only thing I would like to see, I would like to increase the density. I'm not pushing for affordable housing and all of that, in the sense of I want this district to have the same housing as the village. It is part of the village. It has water and sewer like the rest of the village. This is where the state, the federal government, towns want you to build out, is in your village area. You are not utilizing this parcel or these parcels to the max capabilities. The only thing I really want to see is a requirement for traffic control to help the town either implement whatever the traffic is going to be, but I want to see increased units larger than what's this plan, right? Larger than this zoning regulation is right now. I would ask if the Gifford property, which is up for buyout, for the FEMA buyout, is abutting their property at all, Buttermilk's property at all. If it abuts their property, the town has the ability to have an inlet coming through Jolina Court and exiting out at the Gifford property, so you can have a one-way flow of traffic. There are solutions. There are solutions that are just basic common sense, and our community needs more housing, and I'd like to see more 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, not just families, but allow for seniors who are moving out of that 4-bedroom home into a 2-bedroom, those kinds of things. I really strongly recommend the select board push back and really expand this right now, because this is your opportunity. You have other places in the village I know it's all the culture and people don't want to change things. You can't say you were gonna potentially take away Browns Court Park to put affordable housing and not give a developer sitting in front of you who wants to build more units for your community and say, sorry, we're just not gonna go with it because people don't want to change their community. There's no community back there in the sense of the one building they've built up behind that, even if you went more stories high, you're not going to see it from Bridge Street, from the cemetery, from the town center. You probably could see some, but it's not going to be that impactful. And even if the town came up with a solution for a one-way in and out and working with the town center and the parking lot there and some issues that the town has, there could be a benefit for everybody. And I think that this is a missed opportunity if you leave it and approve it the way it is, unless the developer says approve it the way it is right now so we can get moving. But I highly doubt that. I think they'd like another floor or two or more parking. So I just would like you to take this opportunity to think about Richmond as a whole. You have 10 to 12 homes that are probably being bought out for FEMA or properties. So your grand list is dropping. You need to increase your grand list by the loss of those structures. And this is an opportunity. Thank you.
Jay, and full disclosure, I sort of dropped a quick note to Keith earlier today, maybe yesterday. Anyway, and I had not frankly thought much about this until, you know, the world around us has changed since we first started talking about this property, right? And so the question of the FEMA buyouts, and that was, we have been stuck, I think, and are thinking a little bit about how do we manage the traffic flow. And Carol Labonte just brought up again, if the property sort of at the southern end of this part of town are bought out by FEMA, and then for those who don't know, then that becomes town property and you can't build on it, right? And so my question is, to what degree can the town, or could the town potentially use that for traffic flow in some kind of circular pattern? And I'll say, for those of you who did not participate and don't know the history, there was also conversations about having traffic flow through this parking lot. And there was, people resist lots of different things for lots of different reasons. There was very strong resistance to that for a couple of reasons about how pedestrians and vehicles would cohabitate peacefully in that area. But putting that aside, the question is, you know, what is the possibility of pursuing another access or ingress point to the south?
And I think from an engineering point of view, that's not an issue whatsoever. I think from the state regulation or regulatory point of view, it might be, because there is some flora there that I believe is endangered. That is mapped. There are wetlands in that area. And believe it or not, the flood hazard overlay district is not a barrier to this, because you can build public transportation on it, or parking lots for that matter. So that, to me, is the only limitation right there, would be the dealing with the state on those issues, wetlands and endangered species.
And that's really in that in-between section. I'm looking at Google Earth now to be clear. So there's impervious surfaces to the south, there's impervious surfaces to the north. It's really the connections between the two where it shows as wooded land, at least by this image.
Yeah, I mean, that's my response to you on this. You know, it's not impossible. You know, it is possible.
Okay, so before I call anybody else, one, when we're talking about traffic, and yet one of the possible trade-offs is more units based on parking spaces. That seems kind of at cross purposes if we're worried about having more traffic coming out of there, and yet one of the possible trade-offs is you can build a lot of parking spaces and get more units. That trade-off just seems a little odd, because parking spaces, people parking there is more traffic. Just a second. The other thing I want to mention is something that a lot of people I don't think fully get, even at a state level. Every time that our state legislators CCRPC, anybody brings up a discussion of why can't any place build more housing? It always comes down to, in Richmond, one thing, and that's infrastructure. No one is gonna build anything if there's no water and sewer. That's why, places like Williston, South Burlington can put up thousands of units because they have water and sewer in these places. We don't. We have the village. And we have spent years on the Water and Sewer Commission talking about what it can take to get water and sewer out to the Gateway or other places. And the fact is, because of the way we're required to charge residents for running a line by their house, it's cost prohibitive. There's literally no way in the current environment that we can extend the water and sewer. So if we want more housing in Richmond, the thing we have to keep in mind is it has to happen where there is water and sewer. And that's the village. So, if we want more water, if we want more housing, we have to accept that things will be denser in the village. There's just I don't see any other way around that. If you think there is.
I just want to mention that one of the things that the Housing Committee is looking at is why it is impossible to extend the water and sewer lines. It's an ordinance, but it's an ordinance that was created by the select board, and
Not
it's
exactly.
not a state thing, right? It's not
Money.
required by the state.
Money. Who wants to pay for it?
It's.
That literally has been it. And so to summarize, the current users have in public meetings say they have absolutely no interest in speculatively building water and sewage line to serve somebody else at their cost.
Current use is what they want.
What they're willing to pay for. And that is actually part of our ordinance and it's been around forever. You could talk to residents of town who have been here a long time, who wanted water and sewer extended to their house partway out the Great Gateway, and they were told unequivocally, you can do that if you pay for it. So there is precedent of that goes back at least 50 or 60 years. So who's going to pay for it? You should also know, having talked a lot about this, so I'll try to keep it short. Demonstrably, the water sewer customers in this town are lower income than the town as a whole. So it is somewhat challenging to say, I'm going to have the lowest income people subsidize development for somebody else because of water sewer. So that's for current users. What I've mostly heard from non-users is, I already have to pay for my own well and septic. Why am I going to pay for somebody else's water and sewer line? So current users, other residents. Then you go to, well, who are the funding entities? And this may be shocking, but Richmond's not a poor town. So in terms of lining up for who's going to give us money to extend for development, that has always stumbled. So there may be new opportunities with these like tax incentive districts where they pay for themselves as opposed to somebody else pays. But literally that's where it stumbled. Who wants to spend, call it today, what, $2 million? Who's got $2 or $3 million they want to throw at this problem for somebody else's benefit? That's how the conversation has gone.
Well,
Caitlin?
it would just be looking for the money elsewhere, which has not been done as far as I know.
No, we've spent a lot of time trusting on this. Caitlin?
So again, I'm new, so I'm still catching up on some of the stuff in this conversation, but the current building, is that at capacity, building number one? Or are the units open and?
It's 6,000 square feet of commercial vacant space for the last 11 months, and we have 14 fully utilized.
residential spaces
0%
is full.
vacancy rate.
And how many units are in the residential?
14.
14. And so there's 14 units there. Have we done any kind of traffic study since the 14 units opened? And do we know what the impact is there?
Yeah, you did a traffic study of the initial, and we did a traffic study for building 2 also.
Okay.
And it was very.
Which had it maxed out to 45.
Okay, just, we don't need to turn this into a meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission.
Yes.
But for the last 2 years, we have been looking for alternate ways to pay for it out there. Just say that, the housing committee is gonna, if the housing committee finds change in the sofa cushions that makes it possible, I will be the first to buy them an ice cream cone. But, I've been on the Water and Sewer Commission since 2021, and these gentlemen have been on it a lot longer than that, and we have tried for every grant we can get. So to go back to the point, if we, during current state, not 10 years down the road, but current state, want to have new housing, there do not seem to be many other options than to increase the density in our downtown core. Go ahead.
Hi there, my name is Anna Lee and I am a resident on Railroad Street, right across from this proposed change area. And we've been there since 2019. We love Richmond. I grew up in Underhill. My husband Miles is here too, grew up in Heinsberg. Our roots go really deep here. I've always wanted to live in Richmond. I love living in Richmond. We currently rent an apartment and there are so few options. We are constantly worried about if something happens to our apartment, if we get priced out, there's just nowhere that we could go else in Richmond. There's so little opportunities for housing, apartment renting. We just need more housing here. And it is really, really frustrating to think about how much we love this community and love living downtown where we can walk to everything and we know our neighbors and everything is right there. And to think about not being able to stay here is really demoralizing. When we'd love to be able to start a family here, we'd love to send our kids to schools in Richmond, we'd love to stay here for the long haul. And we really want to be able to do that. And we feel really lucky right now that we're here, but we're also renting. So we're by definition really vulnerable to whatever our landlord wants to happen will happen. And it would be really, really great to be able to have more options in town. Not just for ourselves, we have a lot of people that we know who would love to come live in Richmond. And when we tell them we live here, they're like, how did you make that happen? People just are shocked that we have somewhere to live in Richmond. And we don't want to have to leave. And we would love to just see any additional housing. I know there's, concerns about traffic. I try to exit that intersection every single day. I don't think that that's a reason to say no to this. It's something that can be managed. And we just, as some of the younger people here who want to stay here, we really just need any additional housing we can get in Richmond.
Hi folks, Miles Lamberson, as my wife Emily mentioned, we live on Railroad Street. I wanted to mention as well that kind of catching up on this, looking into this, I was a little bit surprised by the density bonus structure. It struck me that the bonuses per se, or the benefits that we derive from this more housing should be enough, assuming we're hitting adequate density. And I'm not going to argue about specific numbers, but these are the people who can staff your volunteer fire department. And if we can keep it volunteer, we're saving ourselves tons of money. These are the people who shop at your local shops. These are the people who staff your schools, your police departments. And so I genuinely understand the desire to add accessible and affordable housing. That said, I think that when we look at markets across the country, we see just an undeniable need to just add housing stock. And so I would implore us all to think about these other benefits that we derive outside of these very tightly regulated bonus structures that I think are just undeniable by adding particularly younger folks who are priced out of an otherwise incredibly expensive housing market. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I just want to talk about the harsh reality.
Could you introduce yourself?
Brendan O'Reilly, owner of the Creamery, early developer with Bard. We were there during the very early times of setting the unit structure, actually. During the time when, when the creamery was dilapidated. And Mark, were you here in the 90s?
Yes.
So I think the creamery, this is a tangent to my point, but I think the creamery's peak employees was about 100 in the early 90s.
That's
About
right.
100.
Yeah.
And those employees came and left every day. Absolutely. None worked here. I mean, none lived right here at the creamery. Sorry. They came and left here. I don't know what the traffic was like then for you, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that the creamery was 100. It was producing a lot of good economy and vibrancy for Richmond. And that was part of the goal of the interim zoning committee to keep the vibrancy up. And they thought industry was it, but it's not it, and it's evolved. And so there you go. Now we jumpstart ahead. I mean, we were heralded as getting the grant. Otherwise, we'd probably still be looking at, dilapidated crack house creamery that was concerned for the town and fighting against the owner. And so Now things have changed and it's like the harsh reality, the economy is hitting us as owners, developers, where we've been trying to partner with the town for years on it. And the reality now, building one, is that we knew it was coming. Green Sea was the major tenant there. They really occupied 90% of the space. And Edward Jones had the front space for most of the other times. A small tenant came in for a short period in the front. We still feel like the front of the building should always be part of the downtown commercial space because it's small enough and affordable enough economically to prop it up and do it for whatever it would be. But the rest of the space right now, we're burning about $7,000 a month in the red just to pay the mortgage because interest rate now is 8%. The rents are going up a little bit. And to me, they're not that affordable at all, but they are well under AMI. And so we're meeting all these parameters, trying to meet the town's goals. And I know Virginia would push that under the table on building one, but we're absolutely suffering on building one during a time when we built the building for $180 a square foot, about 170. Now building costs are about $300 a square foot with a 7%, loan rate. And the economies don't work in terms of, doesn't matter how much is discussed about density and development, unless some of these parameters are met with like tier B state support with Act 250 and residential loans for developers, et cetera, to help with those metrics of increasing home housing. And now we're vacant. I don't think anybody was happy to see Gabe go vacant downtown. And now it's like a ghost town and it's vacant and the creameries are gone, the creamery stand's gone, and it's a big bummer. Whether more housing could have helped it, I don't know. But what we can say is less housing definitely doesn't help it, and the current demographic didn't help it. And so sadly it's gone. And the big hole in Richmond's there. And now we have another hole in our building and we're bleeding. And it's like in residential in the back and the lower level would absolutely be just such an easy thing. Whether we can afford to even do the rehab and create it. We haven't explored it because it's been knocking our heads against the wall, just trying to do the small little baby steps with zoning. I would hope and think to emulate what these guys are saying about welcome housing and figure it out, to partner with us and figure out how to make it happen versus how to throw other barriers up. It's hard. So it's hard sitting on the sideline, having others tell us what the town wants, when really what the town wanted was to get rid of the creamery. And now the creamery is gone. And now we're trying to make it economically, physically viable and bleeding money and still be burdened with it. So I guess the first quote is really, I'd love to see a re-engagement of maintaining the first floor front commercial of downtown Richmond and just saving building one. That's our goal right now. It's just filling building one. We've got some tenant. We have tenants I've been pushing and pushing and pushing back that I do not want in downtown Richmond. The town of Richmond doesn't want them. They're heavily sought after for the state and filling these spaces. All of the tenant turnover would change if they're a tenant, and that would be terrible. But right now we're facing the harsh reality of paying the loan and burning $90,000 a year on it. And it's getting really challenging, guys. And so that's my piece.
Okay, so I'd like to address the select board briefly. I've been doing most of the talking, but as chair, I'd really rather not. There seem to be two questions mainly before us. One, how do we feel about getting rid of the requirement for ground floor commercial in the other buildings? And I don't think I'm hearing a lot of support for keeping it. It seems like that's just, those spaces would never be filled. So from my point of view, I think that's a no-brainer, but that's just my thought. The other question is, do we like the proposed deal where there's trade-offs? You build an accessible unit, you get more units. You build parking, you get more units. You build low income, truly affordable housing, you get more units. Or do we want to instead ask for a revision to this and say, no, we'd really just rather have the maximum units or set the density equal to the village, to the downtown? And I tend to be in favor of saying, let's just match downtown and have the same density, but that's just me on 20%. So I really like to kind of get a sense from the other members of the select board what your thoughts are.
I haven't said much on it. I've heard from a bunch of people, and I think the two main concerns I've heard don't have anything to do with density or with any of the safety concerns. The two main concerns are traffic and then the environmental concerns to get closer to the river. So I know there's obviously a flood hazard overlay district, which they're excluded from building anything in. We know that. There's also some debate. I've seen different reports. People have talked about stuff about endangered species. Never seen anything conclusive about that. I think that would be building 4. So that's kind of not on the table right now anyway. But I've heard that concern from a bunch of people, and I've heard the traffic. I think the traffic is workable. I think we can figure something out there. And I also think that any major development in town realistically is going to happen good portion on that side of the river, which is going to put traffic in town anyway. Met Josh this spring. We reworked the traffic light to try to mitigate some of that, but a lot of it, I mean, all 100 cars backed up to Stone Corral were not coming out of the creamery. They're coming from who knows where, to drop kids off at school instead of taking the bus. So those are the two concerns I've heard. I think the density, I'm very comfortable with the density changing. Obviously higher. I would say we increase density and leave the bonus structure in place. I think that I'm assuming they're probably not going to use it, but it's a good opportunity to have. And the more density areas to base it on, probably the more reasonable cost per square foot works better at higher volumes. I do think that moving forward, we need to really hash out the environmental concerns down there and get all of that documented. I know we've talked about it. I know a lot of it's been documented. I haven't seen a single report that's actually laid out with an independent person going through and doing an actual inventory of all the species and all of that, or wildlife corridor. I can't imagine there's any huge wildlife corridor there being surrounded by town and stuff, but I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's not fauna.
Yeah.
It's flora. So,
Yeah.
Point of clarification, Adam,
Yeah.
point of clarification. Thank you, I appreciate your comments. Are you saying that you'd like to see the density be equal to the village and then have the bonus on top of that?
I guess I hadn't really hashed the specific numbers out. I can see the merit in increasing the density, and I can also see the merit in keeping the bonus structure. I also think having the density bonus is a good. I don't think it's gonna be utilized at any point in the immediate future.
Bonus structure, is that what Virginia was saying she was adding into the village?
The residential density bonus structure is townwide. Would be townwide.
That's what you're
I
adding.
think
in.
that's,
Didn't add in. Proposed.
Right, that's what she's proposing to add in townwide, is the bonus density structure.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to understand it.
Yeah.
Are you looking to increase the density to meet?
I guess I hadn't hashed those two that out. I didn't have those details. hashed out
You could
entirely.
do that. I mean, you could increase the density, what we call the base density, to any point you wish. So we've increased it to 20 from 15 to 20 per developable acre. You can make it 24 and still have.
What's the
a
village?
bonus.
What's the village right now?
Well,
4
it's
units per
for
acre.
the village area. What do you mean?
You said that the creamery parcel is lower than the village.
Than
What is
the-
the village's base?
The downtown, which is Bridge Street.
I'm not what the number, what's the base for the village number?
The base for the village downtown, Bridge Street, is 24 units per acre.
Thank you.
But other parts of the village, it's different.
Okay, I just
Okay.
meant what
Yeah.
you were referring to.
So the magic number we're thinking about is 24.
Thank you.
Virginia, is there a statutory requirement of these bonus structures? And so are we obligated to keep them in effect no matter what our base density is, or is that,
No, you
I
can
don't-
make it however you want. You can write it however you want in your ordinance.
or are we required to have some? We're not required to have some bonus structure in place. We can have no
No.
bonus structure. Okay.
You can have no, this is a new thing for Richmond, having a
Gotcha.
residential zone.
We're gonna go to
Okay.
Bard, then we have a question in the chat, so, Bard, you go first.
So the first one, because I've sort of taken it at people's word, like you can't go over 35 feet, which I've heard, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 10 times in meetings like this. So if that's off the table, it seems like that's something we ought to entertain. And frankly, it's not because I not that I love higher buildings, but it's, to my point earlier, to trade off between the footprint. So you can shrink the footprint by going higher, and that might make sense for this piece of property, given its constraints and some of the flora. The other thing, I don't want to lose sight of this, if the current owners are looking for relief on building one, that we contemplate modifying that to commercial in the front, residential in the back. If that's where the current bleeding is, before we start bleeding somewhere else, maybe address that bleeding. And maybe expedite that as something which could at least give you a green light for remodeling to the degree that that's feasible and desirable. So it seems like that's something we might prioritize because that's real in current space and time.
Yeah. Okay, Chelsea?
Hi, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I'm here. I just had a few things that I wanted to speak to, and actually a question for Keith and Virginia to clarify here at the end. But I just wanted to come on and speak that I am in support of some density increases. I think that likewise to several other people who have spoken tonight, this parcel on Jolina Court is really like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, like really for the town and the topography and all of the land around here. Like there's not a lot of places for us to build and grow and develop. I too am a little bit sort of apprehensive about traffic, but I think that experts in that field could definitely sort of do what they need to do to make it managed, and definitely keep that in mind as they're working through this. I don't, as Adam was speaking about, like, do we want to increase this base density or increase the bonus, and sort of what does that look like? And we've talked a lot about the neighboring district at 24 units per acre. The part that I would love to hear a little bit of clarification on is in regards to, I think it's Keith will know, Act 47 and those parking changes to Act 47. So I just wanted to see if Virginia and Keith could maybe like fact check me on this, because I could be wrong. My understanding of the changes are that now parking is only required at a rate of 1-to-1. So like one housing unit requires one parking space, and it used to be 2-to-1. So I just want to clarify that and just have it on people's sort of radar, simply because if we increase base density versus increasing bonus density, and I think there's benefits to both, but we could be in a situation where development could happen at a 1-to-1 parking ratio. And so that parking density bonus sort of packs in extra parking as like a safety net almost for like Richmond's Jolina Court, because it has more parking similar to what the developer would have done in the first place, but it ensures that it's not lowered to that 1-to-1 ratio, and we're left with a really serious sort of problem downtown because parking's already hard down there. And the I was going to say one more thing, but I can't remember it right now. So I'll wait, and Keith can hopefully see if I'm correct, fact check me on that parking thing. And then I'll raise my hand again if I remember my last comment.
Okay.
Thanks, Chelsea. Yeah, so the Act 47 does mandate that municipalities cannot require more than one parking space per dwelling unit in areas served by water and sewer. So that is in fact the case. Previously, we had a structure where the number of parking spaces related to the number of bedrooms, and that was to try to, think that if there were 2 or 3 bedrooms, there were going to be more cars there. Now we cannot require more than one space per dwelling unit. So there was a concern on the Planning Commission that some of these 1-bedroom apartments might have 2 cars associated with them. So that was one concern. A sort of offsetting concern was the fact if we get rid of the commercial on the ground floor, we actually get rid of more traffic than you would have by having residences there, because you don't have traffic coming and going all day long. If you have a busy commercial, line of businesses there, then you might have actually more traffic. So that was not very quantifiable, but it was a concern. And one of the, having the additional parking that was public parking as a bonus did help some of the planning commissioners feel more comfortable with the fact that there might be more than one car per dwelling unit. So anyway, those are the factors there that relate to the parking.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, just sort of to play this out a little bit, and this recent discussion has sort of been building on what I was saying about the original discussions around the property that began a dozen years ago, is what is the role of cars in downtown Richmond? And what we have with Act 47 and potentially here is an opportunity to have fewer cars per people. But that means that the select board has to take on the challenge of addressing how do people get where they're going. And addressing that last 3 mile problem, and the 3 miles is 3 miles from downtown Richmond to the bus stop out on Route 2. And that's, so I think you kind of got to see that as part of the solution. The state has said that that's the direction we're going, because we cannot require more than one parking spot per living unit, but there's going to be more than one car per living unit if there's more than one person per living.
Okay.
So, and Chris, do you want to talk any more about the affordable housing component?
Well, I don't know if the select board wants to hear that now or.
Well, I'm curious on hearing from the rest of the select board about what your thoughts are, just polling the select board about, do we want to send this back for an increase to a higher density? Are we happy with it the way it is? So, not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm happy to be put on the spot. I think, and I've been listening and just trying to take it all in and understand the bigger picture. And I read all the documents earlier today. I think that I tend to agree that we need more housing. Affordable housing is defined, and it was defined because there was a need, and the state government country needed to put something into place to make it a mandate to have affordable housing and have that be a definition. But I think that we have not defined the piece between affordable housing and, first-time home buyer, which is another sector of community that is critically important. It's the part of our community, like you said, that is serving the fire department. It's part of the community that is serving some of the jobs in town. It's also the part of the community that are starting their families or starting to find their place in Vermont or in Richmond that will then contribute more so over time as they grow into larger houses and so forth. So although that sector is not specifically defined, it's really critically important, especially now, because there's a lot less housing available for folks with the shift in changes of how much it costs to buy your first house. First-time home buyers are looking at a very different market than we were even 5 years ago. So I think that I tend to agree that we need to increase the unit up to what the village is, if I'm saying that correctly. I also would agree with Adam to explore the numbers around what does it look like if we also include the bonuses, because those sectors are important as well. We need to also have housing that is available for seniors, for folks who need ADA access, for people who require affordable housing. But I wouldn't say that those are any less critical, and having bonus structure around that, I really do like that generally. I don't think that that is something that we should put as a blocker in the way of what we're trying to do here when we're looking at an opportunity where we have someone who wants to build units in our town, units in our town to increase the capacity of our town, to have more people contributing to this economy, to have more people who walk over to the market to buy their groceries, have more people who are walking to the farmers market and so forth, and just bringing their kids to school, which they can walk to as well. So it's an opportunity I wouldn't pass up. And I would also like to explore the bonuses generally on top of that for other pieces too. I think beyond that, the parking and traffic situation, I'm interested to put some data against the traffic situation to see if we also need to mandate any kind of mitigation that needs to happen at the intersection, but I just don't understand if we do yet because I haven't looked at the data. But it should be a data-driven decision that if traffic is impacted by this much, then we need to have that as a mandate within the building and the zoning. And then in terms of the parking piece, I know that goes hand in hand, but again, if you have one parking space per unit, the one thing that I worry about is that then you also have the second car that's parking somewhere else potentially. But I like the challenge of having to think a little bit differently as we move into our future here. And I also know that that is an unknown and a big challenge ahead. So I don't have as much of a problem with that. My thoughts.
Can I just make
Sure,
one
please do.
quick comment about the affordable housing piece? So there was this state mandated piece, which is about affordable housing developments. So
Yes.
that is a freestanding development that is going to be an affordable housing development. This is not what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
But what we were trying to do with the residential density bonus program was to provide something that was a little smaller scale than that.
Mhm.
So we are offering with one affordable housing unit, you get 4 market rate housing units.
Yes.
So, and that was kind of based on the ratio that you had in the affordable housing development, but it didn't require you to make an affordable housing development. You could do it on a small scale and just build little by little affordable housing units in your different, so
Yeah.
anyway, that was just the strategy there with offering that.
Good, that's a good clarification. I think when I'm saying the defined by the state piece, I'm saying like the term affordable housing, we all kind of understand what that is and what the ranges are within that. And I really like the idea of challenging us to find solutions to affordable housing in Richmond. And I like the bonus structure around that. I just don't want it to be a blocker to the.
Yeah. And the other thing about the parking is that we investigated ways of getting around Act 47. But they don't want you to get around, like we said, well, maybe you could have guest parking. You can have a little section over here where the extra people could park, but that is getting around the intent of the Act 47, which was to force you to allow more housing by reducing the amount of wasted space on parking. So we couldn't figure out a way to get legally around it without making it being called public parking. So.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of hands up. I just want to say, David, do you have anything you want to ask or share at this point?
I'll be quick with all the hands in the air. How things change, right, Josie, right, Brendan? When we started on this, as I remember, 50-50 was what was on the table for a mix between commercial and residential. That was before the pandemic. That was before, shall I say, the craziness in the economy. That was before the massive shift to working from home and less residential. And, this is a partnership between Buttermilk and the town. We need to recognize that. We need to change as conditions change. So I'll be quick. I am in favor of increasing the density. I would like to see an affordable structure worked into that. But that's a secondary concern at this point.
Okay. So I'm going to go to a couple of people who've had that. Jolin has had her hand up for a while. So Jolin, go ahead. I apologize if I mispronounced that.
No, you said it great. Thanks. Hey, y'all. My name's Dolan. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a homeowner in Richmond. I live on Hapgood Lane over by Cochrane and Dugway. And I just want to say that I'm really in full support, kind of as this person on the end of the horseshoe was saying before, of just having as many blocks removed for adding more housing to Richmond. I will be the first to admit that I don't fully understand all the bureaucracy here, and I know that those bureaucracies are important, that they kind of make things happen. And I also hate to see the fight for affordable housing to get in the way of the fight for more housing. I feel like those two things are both very important and they can't be used to pit against each other, right? Again, I will admit that I don't understand how everything works. So I know it's not that simple. But I just want to put my voice toward more housing and removing any blocks towards that as well, in the village and anywhere. I heard earlier about what that looks like to extend water and sewage. I understand that. I just want to put out there that as someone who would not benefit from that, I would still vote for that. I would still vote to put some of my tax dollars toward that effort if that meant expanding more housing in town. And I just want to name that even if something isn't going to directly benefit me as an individual, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't vote for it because my values don't align with having more housing and having more equity in town. And so I just want to put that out there and remind folks that just because it may not be of a direct benefit to an individual person doesn't mean that that person wouldn't support that decision. And I'm one of those people. So would really love to see more housing here. I know a lot of people in my age group and I'm 38, but in their 20s, 30s, who want to be here, who want to stay here. And we know that Vermont has a population where a lot of young folks are moving out. And a lot of that is affordability. It's not just Vermont is boring or whatever people say, right? We know that it's because it's hard to live here. It's unaffordable. It's expensive and that there's a lot of barriers. So any way to remove those barriers, I am for that. Thank you.
Okay. So to provide a little structure, because we do have other things on the agenda, but this is very important. I'm going to call on Chris, Kara, and Chelsea, and I'd like the members of the board to be thinking about what kind of motion you'd like to make. Do we ask to send this back or do we approve it? So, Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and give a very compressed version of the thinking that went into the proposal for the density goals for the affordability criteria as Virginia invited me to do before. I think some of the problem here, and so I'm gonna ask you to bear with me, I'm going to change the wording a little bit because this has actually evolved over the time that we've done this. State law now allows explicitly something called inclusionary zoning. And inclusionary zoning has been embraced by Burlington and is in place there. That's really what we're proposing here, except in a particular way, as opposed to what people may think of when you say affordable housing, which is often linked to a federal or state program. This is not linked to any other program will be administered locally. And what it does is requires the town for a specific development that in this case, it's completely voluntary and which is not required for the development to move forward. It's only a way the developer can achieve additional density in that development to offer a certain percentage of the units in that development at a price that's tied to the average income. Okay, and it's essentially funded by the developer, usually by increasing the rents on the other units in the development. Okay, so it's not a huge price difference the way that it's structured, but it does make for a diversity of pricing for units. So why is this even attractive? Why is this become something that the state now allows and that Burlington has embraced? I think, we all see what's happened with the commercial market. That's very obvious, and what Buttermilk has experienced, is really underlines that. But the other thing that's happened in Vermont is this large movement of population. I mean, the population of the state has not increased that much over time, in the grand scheme of things. What we're talking about is a movement towards Chittenden County in general. That's where the jobs are. It's where people want to live. And one of the reasons that people want to live in Richmond is location. We are close to just about everything, and we have a good school district. It's a magnet for people to move and live here. what we run the danger of not paying attention to affordability when we add more units is making Richmond bigger by having more unaffordable units. And, you know, yeah, I took a lot of economics as a undergraduate, graduate student. I understand that, you know, if you've increased supply enough and the price comes down, that's what we're all engaged in here. But it's gonna be lumpy, and one of the places that circumstances and geography conspire against is Richmond getting cheaper housing if we don't intentionally make it so.
Thank you very much, Chris. Kara?
And I'd like to speak to earlier when I said I didn't care about the affordable and the accessible. That was meant for the base numbers, just like Caitlin's saying. So I like how you worded it, that it was not going to hinder the process of moving forward, that it was going to be in addition to. And that's why I was trying to ask Adam the same question. It's very important for me that bonus is truly a bonus. But we need to bring the density up to what the village is at a minimum, and then put the bonus on top of that. But the bonus about parking for me, I want to make sure that I'm clear. I'm not worried about adding public parking. I want bonus parking for the people in those units if the state's only saying that you have to have one. So I want to be clear. The rest of the village, we waived the parking. Norfolk went in and we said, no, you don't have to have parking there. The Bridge Street, we waived all the parking there. We took away some of the parking requirements within the village itself for businesses that were coming in and new. So I don't want to put public parking down in a residential area over here. I want the bonus parking to be the people in that residential area's use. Just like you said, that second car is going to have to go find a parking space. I want it to be in their own complex. That's my goal. And Bart, thank you for bringing up the comment of possibly addressing building number 1 in whatever you're working on right now. Because if we can alleviate some of that pressure and put a unit or 2 right now in that area, that's an instant bonus for the community. So thank you, Bart, for pointing that out. And I wanted to make sure it was clear. I agree how Caitlin worded it. Thank you.
Hey, Chelsea?
Hi, thanks. So I remembered the last couple of things that I wanted to say. The first being in regards to these density bonuses, I think I kind of agreeing with the room that it's a fantastic idea to keep some bonuses, like true bonus on top of, you know, like sort of this baseline that's going to get them somewhere for accessible and affordable housing. Especially because the state right now wants towns to be making actionable efforts to increase affordable housing in the town. And so having this density bonus can, you know, prove to the state that we are making an effort in that direction. But at the same time, like Kara said, have it not be sort of barring the initial development, right? Increase that base density, then have the bonus cherry on the top to increase accessible and affordable housing. And then the second piece that I would speak to, and I know we've heard from one of the 2 developers, but not both tonight. But the second piece that I would like to speak to, and I'd be interested to sort of touch on, is this, and kind of to the people sitting at the table in front there presenting, like this has been a lot of hard work, I think, from the Planning Commission's standpoint to bring this in front of people. It's a lot of hard work. I'd like to recognize that, like most things in town, like it's never a perfect answer for everyone, right? And so they're striking that balance. And so I would like to thank and recognize the Planning Commission for doing this and bringing this here tonight. I appreciate the Select Board's sort of opinions that they'd like to increase density, increase housing. I'd like to sort of also suggest in this decision that the Select Board's about to make with this motion and how much housing we're going to increase is sort of thinking to the future. Like this was a lot of work. And if, as Virginia said, we do something now and then they want to do buildings 3 and 4, we're just going to have to turn around and come back and do all this work all over again. So I just like a little bit of thought to be given there. Like, do any of us really want to do this again in 3-5 years? And so whatever the decision is made to keep that base density at, I would love to see it be robust enough to support some development in buildings 3 and 4 With, as I said, that lovely cherry on top with those bonuses, but like that base density not just being just enough to get us by on building 2, I guess would be my final comment. Thank you so much to everyone. I really appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you, Chelsea. So we have a letter that was sent to us in the last couple of days that was explicitly asked to be introduced into the minutes. I'm going to read that letter from a citizen, and then I'd like to go to the board and see what motion. As a bit of clarification, and Josh can check me on this, we have the option of closing the hearing and going ahead to move to adopt the bylaw amendment, or if we want to leave the question open, we have to continue the hearing.
All right. Yep. I'm looking at Keith. He's the expert on these.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say table, but here in Vermont, they say continue. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't want to close the hearing. If we want to send anything back, we would continue the hearing. Okay. So with that in mind, one last piece of input. This is from Lock Park and Williams Hill Road. In 2012, following the voters' resounding rejection of a proposed highly restrictive rezoning plan, I was appointed by the select board to the town's planning commission. A number of years earlier, the cheese factory had closed and been abandoned by the owners, saddling the town with dangerous, highly polluted brownfield site. Since the active operation of the creamery had consumed nearly half of the town's sewer and water system's capacity, potential remediation and redevelopment of the 6-acre creamery parcel in the very heart of the village loomed large for a number of members then serving on the planning commission. Several potential developers conducted due diligence investigations into the site's potential. However, prior to making any serious commitments, due not only to the uncertainty surrounding the potential cost of cleaning up the site, but also in part due to the town's prior perceived clouded history on zoning issues, these parties withdrew. Thus, it was fortuitous for the town's sake that Buttermilk ultimately saw sufficient potential promise in the project, and in the perceived good faith of the community, chose to invest considerable resources and energy in our joint collective futures. With that brief history in mind, here the town is, not always perceived as a good faith partner, a full decade later with only a fraction of the project completed in the midst of a major housing crisis, which has forced the state to step in with Act 47, still dithering over whether or not our planning commission should shift the goalposts on the developer yet again. Therefore, it seems imperative to me as an arm's length constant observer of this travesty of planning that it is the time for the select board to assert its elected leadership mandate over the advisory recommendations currently being offered to boldly embrace new, innovative, forward-looking options for this unique architectural opportunity. Exercising its ethical and moral courage by aggressively intervening on behalf of the developer, the select board would not only serve to expedite this fundamentally crucial community infrastructure project, but more importantly, accelerate the potential for providing substantial new housing for our growing extended families and future neighbors. Signed, E. Lock Park. Okay, so do we have any kind of motion anybody would like to make?
Well, this is part of, I don't think we're ready to approve as written. So if we think of it that way, I think what I've heard is we want to get to 24 units of an acre, either as base or bonus. Maybe base with bonus on top of that. It's my personal perspective, again, partly informed by topography, that we need to allow higher buildings. If I understand it, site plans to date have been based on assumptions about what maximum heights have been. And so that could shift some of the development proposals if you could envision another floor or two in those buildings. And I think that's prudent because of its location in particular. I think we should expedite and prioritize changing part of building 1 first floor from commercial to residential. And I don't have language for that, but I think that's what we should ask for. Yep. People think like language about affordability and accessibility are clearly defined. It's my experience that they are not, that it sort of depends who you're talking to in the context. In my professional world, people have talked a lot about universal design, which means it allows aging in place. You don't go in, it doesn't look like it's all designed for somebody in a wheelchair, but it can be modified pretty easily. Literally what people do is they put plywood behind the sheetrock, and then you move things and literally screw it into the plywood through the sheetrock. So I think we should contemplate bonuses for those things. I'd also say the environmental details, when I look at maybe the transportation roadway access around the back, I don't fully understand what's specifically in the way there between a potential ingress egress point at the FEMA sites and back around to the back, but I think we should explore that. And I'll also say I have never been overly optimistic about the future of public transportation. I am less optimistic today than I ever have been in the last 40 years. So pinning our hopes on we're going to solve some public transportation access to the park and ride, and there will be a bunch of buses taking people to where they need to go. I just don't see that in the near future, at least. In fact, what we see is public transportation routes are being cut back as funding is being cut back. So I am daunted by that prospect. And I know people think, the taxpayers are willing to pay for things. It has been my experience in talking one-on-one with taxpayers disproportionately, they're not. They're not interested. What I have heard is when I went around getting signatures for my select board petition, the thing I heard most often is, what are you going to do to control my tax burden? They didn't say, I have ideas on how to increase my tax burden. They said exactly the opposite. And that could include water sewer extensions. It could include public transportation. I will also point to the failed vote on rehabilitation of the building where we sit today as the case study that's recently available about the taxpayers' enthusiasm about taking on significant increases or debts. So we can't solve all those things. I think if we sort of put those aside and focus on the boundaries of this parcel, I think I put together sort of a pick list or bullet list of items. And I think we should just move forward and say, please move forward with those items.
I was trying to draft a motion for somebody to make, but if you've got a bulleted list or if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say is also to allow higher building height with additional floors.
Allow or consider.
In my opinion, increased density and increased height are what makes sense in this parcel. I don't think you want more density without more height. That's just, and having seen a lot of buildings over my career, that's just what I think makes
I think
sense.
you're also missing the commercial space in this one, are we?
Give me word, what was?
Revising the building one commercial space so that I would say the back half of the building can be a residential space. And I only say that because I think if you're adding in another building when we're at the density that we're looking to add with that many units, then I think the need for the front commercial space becomes more apparent as you add in more people that are walkable to
Okay, so
there.
how's that?
Back half or street fronting.
Is it half?
What?
Is it half?
It's
back 2/3 in the lower level.
I was thinking it's more than half.
Front space
The
is
front commercial space is less.
facing commercial.
How we word it?
Because I think it would be meaningful, because we would have to look at building plans to be able to, what's the best use. of
Yeah,
that
so how do we
space.
word it so that it's specific to facing?
Yeah.
Facing Bridge Street, right?
Yeah.
Third.
Okay, so those parts not facing Bridge Street?
Yeah, those
Yes.
parts
Yeah.
fronted not
Yes.
on Bridge Street.
Yeah.
That gives them the flexibility to maintain some commercial space there,
Yeah.
but the size of it can vary depending on who's
Which
a
we fully agree.
quality tenant.
We think commercial space should be there.
Okay, so how does this sound?
It's clear as we're going to make it.
Okay, would somebody like to move that?
I'll move that motion.
I'll second that. This is
Okay,
hard.
we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bard Hill, to continue the hearing to a future date and request the planning commission to explore 24 units per acre in the Jolina Court District with or without bonuses, and to allow conversion of some parts of the first floor of building one commercial space, those parts not facing Bridge Street, residential, and to allow higher building height with additional floors.
Did we
David,
close the public hearing?
No.
Well, we're not
still
closing
in.
the hearing, we're continuing the hearing.
Oh, okay.
I was also realizing, does it make any sense to include exploration of a back method of ingress or egress around through the FEMA properties?
Connectivity with Bridge Street south of the municipal center.
Yeah, and that includes both what is FEMA gonna say post buyout, and assuming that we don't have contracts today, but when they are bought out, what can we do?
so
And it
what
also
activity?
includes through the FEMA buyout properties
South of the town center.
south of the town center. And it also needs to recognize like impact on flora, fauna, like I can picture in my head the slope, and I was thinking everything is below the slope, but maybe it's not.
2023, we did a study, so we can provide all that.
Okay, so David, do you accept the amendment to your motion?
If you change font to fauna, yes.
Are you okay, and so Bard, does this sum up?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Okay.
Virginia. When we say, I mean, all of this, I know that this is a lot to do, one, and you may or may not have the town plan rewrite to be working on. But, when we say to explore the 24 units with or without bonuses, is that clear enough? Do you guys want that leeway? Do you want something more specific? Like what makes your job easier and to do?
Specificity makes.
Considering that we're making it harder, what will make it slightly less hard, I guess, would be the better way to put it.
Specificity, probably.
So do you want?
It's totally up to you. I mean. And there's a time frame,
Yeah.
exploring
Yeah.
is gonna take longer than doing, probably.
Yeah.
So if you wanna tell us something to do, then that's probably gonna take less time.
I'm sitting here typing, you guys.
I would like to hear from Chris, just.
Oh, Chris, okay, sure, we have a motion, but we can go ahead and hear further discussion.
Well, Kara noted, and I think this is correct, I think you want to have in there the relaxation of the commercial requirement for building 2.
That's a good point.
Oh, and that as well, yeah.
So
I
you're
believe that's
directing the
already,
Planning commission, you want to make sure you direct them to keep the things you liked
Yeah.
and add in the things you want them to add in.
The sentence is turning into a paragraph.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of the commercial space specifically, we did talk about that more immediately. So if we can put in a term that says like, do this, do that part, because I think we're all agreeing on that versus exploring.
Need a comma there.
You have to explore, can you just make it an option?
Develop language and strike explore to develop language that allows. What's that?
And I meant with the, where you had to explore word elsewhere. Down at the explore connectivity, just have it be an option. If it's. And
Yeah, I think the connectivity piece is gonna have to be explored because there's a lot of unknowns. with that.
that's
Yeah.
A&R gave us clear feedback on some of that stuff.
that's a different time frame than the rest of this
We'll talk
stuff.
about that.
So
Yeah,
with or
quick-
without bonuses.
Quick point,
is the
I don't
issue.
know the intricacies of making these motions, but I was wondering, in recognition of the long amount of time this has taken, is it reasonable to put a timeline on this? It'd be a shame if this went back for another 20 months getting kicked around. Could we call it, you got 60 days?
You say 6 days or?
60, no,
Oh,
not really. I mean, I put a number on it, but.
Opening on.
So yeah, I agree. I think that's our one concern is that they have a lot going on already. And so it's a tricky balance because if we push this down with a urgent, we kick everything else down the road
like that.
by that amount. So
Okay, so I'm proposing that.
We certainly would bring this up at our meeting in 2 days. So I don't think we'll promulgate in that time.
Yeah.
But I could see promulgating certainly going into the first meeting in June.
and the more specificity
Move it
we put
earlier.
in this,
You
the
want to say
easier
first
that
meeting in
process
June?
is going to be.
I'm
The
sorry.
more specificity you have in this, the easier.
Yes.
Unless-
So the.
We're not gonna be able to explore the connectivity, I don't think, by the first meeting in June, but
Right,
Yeah.
but we could, I mean, the with or without bonuses.
Set that as later.
Gives me pause because that's.
Right.
that
there's
was
a lot
the
of
question.
subjectivity.
That's always been the question.
So let's hash that out now then.
Without bonuses.
And I agree with Keith, that's gonna be a sticking point because there's a lot of opinions about the 15. There's gonna be a lot of opinions about that. And to have them do all the work and come back to us and not be satisfied, I think is
Yeah.
not fair to their effort. Also,
I think there's three separate pieces here that we're asking for from the committee. The first piece is we're asking for the revision to be able to allow for the commercial space to be removed in building one, and you could say
Totally in building two.
and totally in building two. So commercial space, topic one.
Okay.
When's the
Break it
timeline
up
for
like
that one? And then topic two is the with or without
So base
bonuses.
bonus density is what we're looking for, to be specific. Do you want an increase in what's that number? And do you want to tack on the bonus, the
base.
residential bonuses on top of that?
Right.
The
so
options are to increase the base density and then to have or not have the residential bonus density and what those numbers look like.
So how I read this, or I guess not read this, that's the wrong, how I interpret our conversation with this is I think I think we all view the 24 as our desired base density, where there's
Correct.
ambiguity is whether we want to tack bonuses on top of that, which would be above and beyond the other
Then you
districts.
want to put a cap on that
We'll put the
also.
cap on it.
Mhm.
You know, is there an inherent cap on that by the bonus structure?
Currently in Jolina
Be-
Court, it comes up to.
Well,
Would it be 20% over?
no, it's
Yeah.
whatever we make it.
Okay.
We can make it whatever we want to make it.
Well, it's. But once you get above a certain size, then it comes under a different regulatory structure because of the state,
Correct.
so.
Five units.
Right.
and
Once you
20
go
units.
Once you
relevant-
get above the 20%,
That's the 20 and 5 rule.
then it falls under the affordable housing development.
Gotcha. So do you?
If you, but that's just with affordable housing, that piece of
So
the density bonus,
this is-
which we do not.
With the 24 established, it would be my preference to defer to the planning commission on the bonus structure and that, because I don't think I have the info or knowledge right now to really weigh in on that.
Yeah.
It's kind of my take, and I don't want to weigh in on something I don't know anything about.
Giving us a hard number on the base density.
And that's
That's
workable.
that's the most important.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what I'd like to ask is, would you be okay with just having an increase in the base density and can the residential density bonus program, or is that not what you have in mind?
Not sure, but I'll know it when I see it. I think that,
I would like to see that the base density is, as we're agreeing, is the 24 units per acre. And I think separately, not necessarily tied to this, I would like to have that explored more to help the town in other ways, and
Mhm.
not specific to this situation, because I really like what you framed out there and the purpose behind it
So that is, you're not requiring us to bring that back with this, then we could get rid of it for now.
with this.
A floor of 24 with a potential for bonus.
What?
A floor of 24 units with a potential for
Well,
bonus.
you would like to see a potential for bonus
Right.
units
Overarching.
We have an agenda from the
in what we're
developer.
coming back to
So-
you with.
Really basic, super quick. I just wanted to help streamline the process.
Please.
If number one to be met before number 2 and 3, that is the most critical piece. And if it's like by the next select board meeting, they're following, not sure what the executive decision-making process and warning, and there's a lot of processes I know in the metrics. I'm just saying to separate that out fully from 2 and 3, because I know for 2 and 3, just to get to the floor today took 18 months. So 20 soft. And so I don't want to negate the fact of the reality of history. And so those who don't know the past are doomed to repeat it. And I just want to say as a developer, that let's call it the anti-hatchet scenario of happening down in the south. The part of the Main Street. So we really need to address it, whether then we need to go and explore it. But I'm not gonna waste any time exploring it without even knowing if we can fund it and et cetera, make it work. But in terms of the square footage, rentable space, commercial space versus residential space, which you guys should know the metric, it's about 3 times the income of commercial space. It's at least double in most cases. So, and it makes the building actually start to become payable. So that's all.
Okay, so this is the best I've got so far. Since we're looking for hearing back regarding bullet point 1 ASAP, I've said by the next meeting, with the select board, if that is in fact something that's doable. The base units, 24 units, which is less hyper mega ultra critical, came to the first meeting in July, so that if that's more than enough time, you can say so, but if that's good, we can go with that.
Well, we'll have to warn it, so.
Yeah, okay.
Do we
we need to
just
warn the
have
first
one
part, though?
planning commission meeting?
Do we need to push
do-
the first part out
do
long enough so we
number
can
one.
warn that? Keith,
That'll be one planning commission meeting.
Just for number one?
do we have to push that far enough out that you can warn that?
Yeah, I mean,
I
because
think
if we're gonna make that into a zoning change, then there's a whole warning procedure for that, that we have hence up until now allowed a month for.
Well, the only warning we have to do is for the select board. We don't have to do it for the planning commission. And we will warn the hearing, but we don't have to warn a public hearing for this. For us to revise the planning, to
Right,
us to
but we have
revise
to
the
do
minutes.
the zoning amendment
Yeah, we-
bylaw, a new bylaw, we have to, do all of that if that is going to be a standalone zoning
We've
change.
already done that. We're in the process now. We're in the legislative part of the.
Okay, if 2 weeks is sufficient for you to meet the legal niceties, and do you have a planning commission between now and 2 weeks from now?
We have one in 2 days, and then that,
So
So that
in your
would be the
opinion,
only
can we
one.
knock this first bullet point out of that meeting?
But is that, your meeting already been warned with an agenda for 2 days from now?
Oh, yeah.
So is this on the agenda? Then
Well, it is as an update.
So,
as an update?
it's not mentioned
It's
at
not
all.
mentioned it, yeah.
So
It's
maybe
just
that needs to be the
update.
Gotta be warned.
first
What is
meeting in
next?
June. Right, because you're not gonna have time to get it on the agenda to talk about it.
Yeah.
You can't do that
Be
much.
the second meeting.
So this, he's saying first meeting in June, does that give you time?
First meeting in June would give us
You
time.
give,
For the planning commission, yeah.
for the planning commission, well, to get it back to the select board by June?
And to have it warned,
Do you need to warn a new hearing, or it's just a continuation of the hearing? But now that we split it into 3 different dates, I don't know how you do that with the
I'm
continuation.
getting a little confused here.
Yeah, because if it was just if it was just a continuation to one date, you wouldn't need to rewarn it for the select board.
Correct. Correct.
So I don't know how you handle 3 different dates
Stays open.
without one of them being the continuation and the
Give
other
us a firm
2.
date for Jay, to what Jay you were saying. You were saying first in July, last in June, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so if the next one is
The
second,
the first bullet point can be what we're continuing to.
yeah,
The other 2 can be implied because we know we want to work on them, but then in June, we can continue till July.
Oh, I see. Well, yeah. Why wouldn't we turnkey at all?
no, but we can't continue, if we continue in June to July, then you're not gonna finalize building 1 in June.
Kind of with Keith on this, that
You wanna
I know we want to mitigate some of their concerns initially with the.
So do we want to
housing
have
in
it
the
back
back,
be the
but
first select board meeting in July?
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
happy with
I
that.
think if 30 days is gonna make a difference,
What-
they're gonna be into that for more than that for construction and all that, so I think we keep it together.
So do we want to say continue to the first meeting in July to give you guys time to do all?
In my
Do
preference.
the last thing by the first meeting in July.
Well, we can't do anything about the FEMA buyouts, but we certainly can look at the impacts. Yeah, we have a study from 2023.
I guess what I would
Yeah,
expect in that
study's
third
fine,
one
good
would
for
not
5
be
I
a,
years.
know that we're gonna have a final recommendation, and we can explore it.
I guess I wouldn't expect like a formal feasibility study, just like a cursory kind of, are there constraints and
But I'm not sure why we would even have bullet number 3 on there, to be honest with you. Because that's a DOD issue.
You know, I'm good with that because at some point we've got to make this motion.
And what about density bonus? What, did you want to have the density bonus piece in there? Some people wanted to have it in there.
Okay, it's getting shorter, which is good. Bullet point number 2. And I know there's some hands going up in the audience and I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying not to lose the momentum we've got. We will come to you before we can vote. Is this okay?
What about the density bonus piece that some of your people wanted?
Okay, and how do we want to phrase that?
it's density plus bonus,
Sure, I can take it.
and they can leave the.
Yeah.
bonuses on what and et cetera, I again would defer to the planning commission as they are the experts on this.
Affordability and accessibility.
Okay. So can we live with this language? I'm not asking you to vote yet because we got 3 people who really want to talk. Ma'am, you haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, this is Katie Mather, and I just wanted.
Oh, you changed your hairdo.
I did, I kind of.
Yeah.
You got rid of number
Disguise.
3, the environmental issues, by saying that was a DRB, the domain of the DRB, but when we have previously tried to say that the environmental is the domain of the DRB, we have found out that that is not regulatorily accurate. And so removing the environmental issues and kicking it to the DRB, to me seems non-functional.
Okay. Keith? Yeah, you. I'm sorry.
I'm from Warnke, go back to the DRB days when Josie and Brendan first brought this very idea. All of the discussion is great and thank you. I'm interested more in sort of how do you make things go faster? And you know, we write rules to slow us down. Sometimes you've got to move faster. And so my question is there any authority, opportunity, process by which Buttermilk could pursue a variance temporarily granted to start the redevelopment of building 1 while these administrative changes are made in good faith towards that ultimate destination? So you take 1 and you say, okay, it's a couple thousand square feet. We're going to run an experiment. We want to see how quick they can flip that and get some revenue and stop bleeding while we deal with these other things that have hamstrung us for 20 months, right? And may therefore do it again for some months, but at least we can provide some relief to our partner who, again, in good faith, took on a pretty big risk with a brownfield, not knowing there was going to be, you know, a global pandemic and a collapse of commercial markets and all the things that none of us thought when we laid this thing out in the first place. Seems pretty low risk. Somebody will fight us on it, or them, or somebody for sure. But the consensus I've heard is like, we don't want to do that because it gets some more people living in Richmond. And I, as a taxpayer, think the best way to reduce my taxes is to bring more taxpayers to Richmond. And if there's some way we can sort of demonstrate the ability for someone who wants to do something to help them do it a little more quickly in a space that's otherwise empty, we can learn a lot quickly.
Okay. So Keith, can they explore a zoning variance to get moving earlier?
It'll probably take 6 weeks just to get on an agenda. And the chances of getting a variance in the state of Vermont is nil.
Okay.
Why can't we have the relaxing the commercial requirement in a portion of building 1? Would that, I mean, do you want to just do that first?
That would be awesome.
Why don't we just do that first? I mean, we can do that in a month for sure.
Okay.
Why don't we just continue it
It's gonna
to a
take so
month?
long to get building to
Yeah.
refinance.
Yeah, so
It's not happening this year.
the
So it's like we have time.
density thing.
What
is
is
not-
happening every month is the 7
Yeah.
grand going out the window. and building.
Yeah. So why don't we just do number 1, the commercial requirement in building 1, you can put some units in there. Taken away from your, you know, total, you're allowed, but then we'll work on the other part.
Okay.
So technically, you could close the hearing right now, make that change and approve that right now tonight. And the rest of the stuff that you're kicking down the road, the can down the road, can happen in July and you can open back up the process and do it then. So you can close the hearing tonight, make the motion tonight, and they can start their process.
We don't have the exact quantity of
Yeah.
space that we're
You can make
talking about.
a calculation of square footage right now from the developer. If
It
he says
wasn't
2,000,
in the proposal that the
Right,
planning commission made to the.
right.
select.
Right.
Substantial change.
I've been at a planning commission
Okay.
presentation for the select board, and you guys have changed zoning out in the gateway at a public
Okay,
hearing.
Carol, that we really need to move on. If this motion is something that we can live with and it gives you an adequate time and makes the meeting clear, I'd like to go ahead and have a vote, but the motion was very different from this.
So this is the first meeting in June that we're talking about, for the number 1.
Right.
But now,
Number 1.
number 2 needs to be July.
And
And actually, that's gonna be a separate hearing.
yeah, that'll be a,
So
that, why
not
don't we just continue it till the first meeting in June and then we can talk about this piece.
Okay, so the motion basically becomes
Okay.
this. And at the first meeting in June, we can then continue it to July to do the other part.
No, I think you'll wanna vote on this in June to put it into the ordinance.
Right.
And then you're gonna
Okay.
have another hearing on the 24 units, which will be in July and August.
So a
after
whole
they,
new here.
I think it'll have to be. Yeah,
Okay.
if you want to move fast, that's how you move fast
good.
on one piece and the other piece has to
Okay,
be
so this
slower.
part doesn't even need to be in there for the motion.
I think that's what Virginia said. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna put that into the zoning, you know, we have to finalize that, warn it and everything, put it
Yeah.
into the zoning with a bylaw amendment and all that. Then we'll come back and do the next part.
Okay,
So
so this is substantially different from what was originally moved.
I move that.
I second it.
Okay, so the motion made by David Sander, seconded by Bart Hills, to move to continue the hearing to the first select board meeting in June 2025. As follows: relax the commercial requirement for building one's commercial space not facing Bridge Street to allow conversion to residential. Okay, you've heard the motion. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I. Jane.
I have one, it had nothing to do with this motion, but it's a plea for the state designation process. We heard a lot of people talking about how do we make things more, sorry, Josie Keitel, I know people can't
Thank
hear,
you,
so,
thank you.
so Josie Keitel, Buttermilk. So the state designation process is a serious thing that's undergoing right now
Thank you,
that
thank you.
I think the planning commission had a look at. And if you do state, there's 4 designations. And if you don't choose to be a tier 1B, you'll get less priority in funding. You'll get less priority. We as developers will get hit with more costs. That means that increases our costs, which increases the affordability. And that's it, and also like some of the rental revolving loan stuff that we went through last year will be an indication of whether or not you have that tier status. So I'm just making a play for, I know there's a timeline associated with that. I'm not sure, Virginia, you guys had your first discussion about it last week.
Yeah,
I would
more
say,
discussion in the
yeah,
works.
so I would just add that as a tool by which you can make things more affordable.
It's a critical path to development. It negates Act 250 fees, helps with state funding, and helps the town like achieve these goals for Act 47.
So, yeah, it's a significant discussion. It would be a significant.
Or-
Yeah, okay. I just, I heard it
It's on the
not go
screen, she'll
positive.
figure it out. Thank you. for thinking
To
of
have
that.
the videos
Okay,
too.
Okay.
so with that said, I want to thank everybody who came and spoke.
Thank you.
We need to move on to the next item on the agenda because
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer a change in the agenda to slide item H up to between item C and D.
Okay.
Given Officer Duke is a youth and he has a bedtime coming up.
Okay, is there any objection to the select board to slide item H after item C?
No objection.
Okay,
Thank you.
then we will quickly do, I assume, item C, which is consideration of approving the Chittenden Solid Waste District's proposed fiscal year 26 budget. Is she here still?
I think so.
Wow.
Gonna stop sharing.
Thank you for your incredible patience, CSWD person.
This is Sarah Reeves.
Sarah.
Hi,
if you'd
everyone.
like to Present now. Thank you for putting up with us.
If I could, I apologize, but we do have a rather important presentation, topic I need to talk to you all about. If Beth Karen, my colleague, could be allowed to be able to share her screen, that would be.
What's going on with the audio? Can you hear?
Your audio is, terribly, ma'am.
My audio is not great. Let me see here. Stand by.
There's something.
All right, is that any better?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Proceed. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So oftentimes I'll get questions as to why we're here. I'm Sarah Reeves. I'm the executive director for Chittenden Solid Waste. And according to our charter, our member municipalities, of which you are one, has to vote to approve our budget. So everyone, every select board, city council has one vote. And this is your opportunity. Next, please. And I believe you all know who we are, and this is for folks who aren't familiar with CSWD. This is where we are, who we represent. We represent all of Chittenden County. It's a quick snapshot too of essentially what our revenue is made up of. User fees or tipping fees that tend to be from our drop-off centers, our materials recycling facility, compost facility, The SWMF is a solid waste management fee, and that is a fee that is charged to haulers when they bring trash up to the landfill for disposal. And then material sales, so compost and recycling. Folks are generally also interested in knowing how how Chittenden County is doing. So I move folks over to the column 3. So of the 306,000 tons of solid waste that is generated, about 123,000 tons are landfilled. And of that, half could actually be diverted. So when we talk about a lot of the education and outreach activities that we do on behalf of our member municipalities, we are focusing this year and probably next year as well on getting that green portion, that food scraps out of the landfill and into compost. Next, please. So for fiscal 26, our bottom line this year doesn't look too much different from our bottom line last year, both in the revenue and the expenses. So this is our operations and administrative budget. There's a little asterisk there that I'll explain in a moment. But we're looking at revenue after our cost of goods sold at 16,035,000, expenses just under 16 million at 15.9. So we are essentially budgeting to break even this year. Next year. Thanks. And here's what the income is made up of. So generally, again, we've got those 3 components: tipping fees from the MRF, organic recycling, environmental depot, DOCs at 42%. Next, please. Our expenses still are running at materials management as our highest expense, and that is the fee that we pay to haulers to either take our material that we collect at DOCs to the landfill, to move the sorted recycling out to market, to our HHW, household hazardous waste vendor, to move that material out to recycling, etc. Next, please. So again, this year compared to last year, or to next year, sorry, this budget compared to this current year is not much changing. And I think that shows that we've done a pretty good job at reining in some of our expenses to make sure that we're coming in under that, just under that revenue. Next. As far as fee changes, there aren't really many fee changes being presented, but for one larger one we want to talk about. So at our drop-off centers, for those folks who still may come to our Wilson drop-off center, just one small fee change in the small bag. Mattresses are going to increase. We're negotiating that with Price or our vendor. But our MRF recycling, our ORF recycling, environmental depot, no increases. The increase that we are proposing, which was approved by an ordinance change by our board, is to increase that solid waste management fee to $40 a ton. Next. So what is that fee? It is the per ton fee that we charge to haulers for the Chittenden County generated trash disposed at the landfill. So this fee is not charged on recycling or compost or leaf and yard or metals, just on trash. And it's specific to CSWD. This is the fee that we use to help support our activities that help us achieve our mission. So it supports administration, finance, compliance, IT. Our outreach and education is fully supported by this fee. It helps to support some of our facilities. Our environmental depot and rover are about 80% supported by this fee. And it also helps to fund some of our reserve funds, like our capital fund, closed landfill, a new fund called the MRF Project Fund, operations and community cleanup. Next please. So why are we needing to increase this fee again this year? We did increase it slightly last year. It's because the materials recycling facility capital project is projecting a funding gap. And this has unfortunately been the result of primarily first, foremost, the COVID-related delays. We were delayed in starting this project by about 2 years. High inflation since that time. But most importantly was the loss of the intended site that we had, that we owned on Redmond Road, which led us to needing to purchase a new site just further down Redmond Road. But that was a $3 million swing that we could not anticipate. And one of the things that we want to do, actually, that they come back down to, is we're looking to avoid taking on more long-term debt. And you were just talking about the effects that is being felt in Richmond. And we understand that as well, because our long-term debt is guaranteed by our member municipalities. And we did have a very strong support for this project in 2022 82% of our voters approved this bond for us to build this facility, and we don't want to put any additional debt on, potentially on our municipalities if we're unable to pay that debt service. We did look at other funding opportunities that were dismissed, a per capita fee. Again, we do not send you a bill for the services that we provide, nor a municipal assessment, and nor did we want to increase the MRF tip fee or increase DOC fees. If we increased the MRF tip fee to try to cover the shortfall, we would have had to have increased it by about $35 a ton, and that was would have made recycling more expensive than trash. Next, please. But who pays this? Well, we all do. If we generate trash in Chittenden County, we are paying this fee through a portion of our bill that haulers charge us. So if you're a subscription customer for haulers, this fee is built into your bill. So right now, on average, Chittenden County households tend to generate about 1.12 tons of landfill trash every year. An average household will spend about $50 a month, plus or minus. So if you're at $50 a month, right now you are currently paying just under $3 of that 50 goes to CSWD to support our activities. At $40 a ton, that will increase to just under $4 a month to support CSWD. So basically that means that this new increase will be less than $1 a month. This is not a new fee. We've had this in place since 1993, but it has consistently lagged inflation. We tended to have done large jumps. The large jumps are harder for haulers to predict and absorb into their cost structure. So we're making a shift in how we approach this. When I say that we've lagged inflation, that orange jumpy line is our fee. So you can see back in 2003, we were at that $17 and change number. We jumped it up in 2009, held it steady, jumped it up, and then held it steady for 12 years, which I do think was a mistake, and then increased. If we had kept pace with the cost of living with the CPI, that dotted pink line is the garbage and trash index, and that is determined by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. We have consistently been below the cost of doing business in the garbage and trash industry. So if we had been going along with the CPI, our solid waste management fee today would be about $39.21. So we're just looking to actually bring our fee up to even. And the way we're looking to do that going forward, and why this is important for the MRF and for the capital projects, is to, instead of doing large jumps, to utilize a series of small, regular annual adjustments, keeping pace with inflation. So again, using one of those two CPIs, those indices from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it would be a recommendation in the district's annual budget, which goes to our board first in November. We do that ahead of town meeting day, so that if there are any municipal assessments, we can get that notice out to our member towns. It will be vetted by the Finance Committee after a public hearing in January, and then through our Board of Commissioners. And so this will also set us up for the long term to be able to better fund our capital reserve. The MRF project is going to pretty much deplete that capital reserve, and the MRF had been the facility that had been consistently contributing to the fund over the past 25 years. When this new MRF is built, it will be responsible for generating enough revenue to satisfy its operational needs, its capital needs, and pay the debt service on the building. Next, please. So that means a revised income for us with this $40, excuse me, realizes about $17.5 million. So the $16 million budget that I showed you earlier, that income estimation, that is for operations and administration only. Anything over the need or the revenue coming in at 16 will go specifically directly to the MRF Capital Project Fund. Next. And we do have a requested motion to approve. And I realize I went through that very, very quickly, but I was hoping also that you've read through the packet. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation. Members of the Select Board, do you have any questions for our colleagues from the CSWD? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, this is David. I move to approve the Chittenden Solid Waste District's proposed fiscal year 26 budget.
Caitlin, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins, to approve the Chittenden Solid Waste District proposed fiscal year 26 budget. Seeing no discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Lauren, I.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Now, Josh, you had a comment about the agenda.
Let's say, thanks, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just thinking, if we move item H up. Cohen's also here for the Tesla police cruiser. I know Connie's also getting tired, so maybe we just keep things as is and try to get to the financial stuff and then move on to police if that's okay.
If that's okay with Duke.
Duke is asleep.
I told you.
Is that okay with the select board?
Yep.
Okay, Connie, then I believe the floor is yours.
So we'll do, I mean, she's here. I'll run through the financial
Okay, you do it
update.
then, Connie.
And then she'll probably, and she's here in case there's any deeper questions that I can't answer. And also she's more familiar with the policies. So the financials are included in the packet. I'll kind of hit some highlights right now. Current year tax receivables are at 102.45% versus the third quarter last year. Or sorry, right now as of what we expect to raise after the third quarter. So we're trending a bit ahead. People often pay a bit ahead of their taxes, so the next payment will be a little bit lower, but good to see that we're collecting revenue faster than we had anticipated. Summary of bank accounts and reserves due to the July 24 flooding. General account was at 2.8 million on March 31st this year versus 4.6 million on March 31st last year. So right there, you can see our deficit that we struggled a lot with during the budgeting season. The police department payroll budget is under budget by about $402,000 due to vacancies. However, the total of all lines, including officer expenses, is over by $152,000 due to unbudgeted contracts with Heinsberg for patrol officers. So we've got some savings there as a result of the lack of staffing, and even with the increase in patrol services from Heinsberg. On highway, the revenue is up due to state aid paying us on state aid class 1 and 2 for all 4 quarters in the first quarter of 25. And also that was a little bit more than we had budgeted for. Payroll and overtime is up due to no surprise to anyone, the July flooding, as well as a pretty long winter with a lot of snow. So overtime is a bit up in the highway budget. So those are some of the highlights of the budget. If anybody had any specific questions, happy to dive in. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, Connie, did you have any, thank you for being patient. Was there anything particular you wanted to call out?
Now that we've gone through these, I will be working on our cash flow, and Josh and I will be meeting with Jim Feinson, the town's treasurer, to see if we need to borrow money.
I guess the only quick question, I mean, the flooding stuff all makes sense, police services and all that. Is there anything in here that is unexpected outside of those, or?
Not really, other than we talked about just now.
Good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Connie. Thank you, Josh, for all your work putting all those numbers together. And I want to remind everybody listening at home, the financial numbers are all in the select board packet on the town website for this meeting. And they are exciting reading, but very important. Obviously, we don't take these lightly. So if you do read them and have questions about any aspect of our numbers, you're welcome to contact Josh, Connie, members of the select board. And if we need to, we can revisit these at a future meeting. Our next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of amendments to the bank reconciliation and purchasing policies. These policies are in the packet with a clean version and a tracked changes version. Connie, if you want to, could you give us an overview of these changes?
The bank reconciliation, we were pretty much just changing the format, and both policies that we looked at, we were pulling the procedure pieces out and the control pieces out so that they flowed better. And on the purchasing one, that is one of several policies that is part of our procurement policy where we have to meet the federal guidelines. So that's very important, but we did change some of the purchase order classifications and the bidding classifications. But aside from that, again, it was a lot of moving around, changing of some verbiage just to help it flow better.
Yeah, just to review the purchase order changes. So right now, anything over $1,000 requires the town manager to sign a purchase order. In this, we upped that to $3,000, just sort of to try to keep up pace with inflation. I don't think that's been changed for probably 10 plus years. The next tier is $3,000 to $15,000, which would be, sorry, that's where the town manager signs. It used to be $3,000 to $10,000. Now it's $3,000 to $15,000, and anything $15,000 and over would be a purchase order signed by the select board. So increasing some of those limits there. And we did a similar thing. We kind of matched the bidding process to the PO process. So 0 to 3,000, department head or designee may purchase with multiple quotes based on both quality and price should be considered. When we look at 3,000 to 15,000, this is where you need to get 3 written quotes from vendors, and then $15,000 or over is a sealed bid process. So we tried to really tie that back to the thresholds and bring anything over $15,000 to the select board.
Okay, so there's no motion needed, but does anybody have any questions?
Well, there could be. You
Oh, there
could
could
approve them both tonight, or if you have questions or
Okay, there's
concerns.
no motion in the packet.
Oh, there wasn't?
Nope.
Oh, boy. Well, that's an oversight on my part.
Okay, so we have the option of approving one or both of these policies. Despite there being no motion in the packet, I'm confident we can work something out.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve both policies as presented.
Is Bart, I'll second that.
So thank you for catching me there, Josh.
No, I'm should have set you up better.
We have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill, to approve the bank reconciliation policy and the purchasing policy as presented. Any discussion? Please take your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Our next item on the agenda, we do an annual audit, and it's generally considered best accounting practice to not keep using the exact same auditing firm year over year over year. So we have sent out an RFP, request for proposal for auditors, and only received 2 responses, which is fewer than we got last time. RHR responded. They have performed our audit the past 3 years. A firm called Telling and Hillman also responded. RHR is more expensive, although we've been very satisfied with their work. Telling and Hillman, on the other hand, cannot get to the audit until November, with a draft not being available until December 31st. As Josh puts it, this is a deal breaker, as we need a draft by October 31st in order to help with the budgeting process. So there is a comparison chart between the two and the responses in the packet. I believe Josh has put that up. If you could make it a little bigger, it might be easier for people to read. But the recommendation is to hire RHR because they provide what we need by when we need it, and the other firm does not. Any questions? We have a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is David. I move to hire RHR for financial auditing services.
Is Bart, I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill to hire RHR for financial auditing services. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, I.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Our next,
Josh, is just a quick question. Was it the time frame that we proposed, why we didn't get multiple bids, or what, was there any indication of why we didn't, or is it?
No, I mean, 3 years ago when we went out to bid, we also heard that a lot of companies are starting to get away from municipal auditing. We sent it out to all the same companies that we had in the past. I think we sent it out to 6 or 7 companies. These are the only 2 that responded. And unfortunately, Hilling and Hillman, yeah, their delivery date was going to be far too late for us.
So we don't really have many options, it seems like.
It seems like the number is dwindling. Yeah.
Is that a statewide or national problem, or is that just?
Or it seems to be
It's
saying,
certainly
yes.
statewide. I will say I've heard of a couple of organizations that got 1 bidder.
Really, yeah.
Yes, we have options. We have more options.
We
than they
have
do,
two.
We sort of had 2.
Okay.
okay, we are almost, but like Sergeant Cohen and Canine Duke. We have a discussion of a request for reduction in the assessed value of properties in the Southview stormwater permit area. Town assessor Lisa Truchon, got that right, is working there in the back, and Josh is here with us as well. Josh, would you like to introduce the topic and then let Lisa give more detail?
Sure. This is really a follow-up on the last couple of meetings where we were discussing the Southview stormwater permit and a request from some of the residents for a reduction on their appraised value. There's been a letter to Lisa about that. We talked about it at the last meeting. Lisa had come up with a calculation of about, I think it was if $14,000 or so to reduce the value, primarily leaning on the fact that there was a letter from the state that if they did not come into compliance with the stormwater permit, there could be a lien placed on the property. Questions and concerns were brought by the board and the public at the last meeting saying, well, there's other properties that are subject to the stormwater permitting as well. They're not getting a reduction. Is it fair to reduce Southview's as well? At the last meeting, I think I misstated that we finalized things by April 1st. Lisa corrected me. Those letters don't go out until I think June or July for a final.
14 days before grievance, which would be the beginning of June.
So
usually.
nothing is
It's not a
set,
deadline.
nothing is set in stone, and there's still some time to make some changes. So I guess I'll turn it over to Lisa if there's more to add to that.
Well, I know everybody had questions, so here I am.
Yes.
So this is Bart. One question I had, what I understand is there are two process kinds of questions. One is, as I understand it, an individual property owner can ask for a review or complaint appeal.
They can- Yeah, every year, any property owner has the ability to grieve their assessment.
So that would be ostensibly one-on-one versus a class of property owners.
There would be one person that brought it to our attention. But it's a process of if we do for one, under this circumstance, based on the letter from the state wastewater directly affecting this one thing. You can't just, the squeaky wheel is not the only one that gets oil. It's just an equity issue. If we do anything for one, they're all in the same boat.
So fair enough. The other equity issue that came up is there are other properties in Richmond that are impacted by the 3-acre stormwater rule who have not made complaints.
So to my understanding, and I listened to 2 hours of the environmental agency talking about this, they are making an effort to reduce phosphorus runoff.
Yeah.
And they're looking at the tools in their toolbox and they're going after things that they can affect. And they're going for, if you will, the low hanging fruit. Here's a 10.35 acre stormwater. There's teeth there, we'll take care of this one. And the other part of that issue is also, I may be wrong, but my understanding from listening to that, the people in this, the 49 people in this 10-acre parcel with the town do not have a homeowners association.
Correct.
Where the other places do have a homeowners association. So the lien is going to the association, not to the individual homeowners.
So that seems sort of subtle to me, but there is no lien at this point in time, right?
There's a threat of a lien, and if somebody were doing title searching and looking through, finding this wastewater permit and doing due diligence and going back to the state and finding out what is the legality of this and where is it in the system? Are we all up to code? Yes or no? And if not, that might impact, and I'm not saying it does impact.
Okay.
But the idea too is when somebody gets a letter like this, all of a sudden it's like, I can never sell my property. It's gonna cost me $50,000. Well, my math says no. But I don't know either what they're gonna come up with. So it's an unknown that you try to address.
So that's where I'm headed finally, perhaps. If it's an unknown, we don't know ultimately what the impact on property values are. What evidence do we have on property values in Southview in the last year in terms
We
of
know
sales
that
versus
property
appraisal?
across throughout town, not just in, there hasn't been a lot of sales in Southview. And it's not because people can't move their real estate in Southview. It's because it just doesn't come off. It's a supply demand. If they were to sell that, if somebody were to sell their property in Southview, where would they go?
Have there been any sales in Southview in the last
There
year?
was one in June.
Was that sale,
Last June.
was that sale above or below appraisal?
Oh, it was above. Everything in Richmond on average is above what the assessed value was. Stuff is selling anywhere from 5 to 20% higher than the assessed value from 2023.
We have a question.
Can we, 1 second, just a point of order. I noticed that Caitlin Filkins has stepped away. I think you were recusing yourself from this question.
Myself, I'm affected by the
Okay,
stormwater.
I just wanted to make sure that was stated and on the record.
Okay, thank you. Kara?
Welcome to this.
Yes, Carol Abati. At the last select board meeting, I presented you with multiple properties that have been sold in Southview in the affected area in the past year. They range from a 22% above grand list value to 49% above grand list value. So I do not believe there's any evidence that property values are affected in Southview in this specific area. Outside this area, you have properties that I think one just sold for 993,000. Is pending at that level, and you have one that just went on the market that's has an assessed value of 650 going on the market for 1.1. So my argument is, if you cannot prove, first of all, if it's not a true title defect, that there's a threat of a pending lien but no lien, then I question whether it's a true reduction in the grand list value. We are not looking for people to have their grand list values reduced below the 2023 appraisal value just because properties are now selling for more than that. We do not guarantee people in our community that they're going to be able to sell their house for above the 2023 grand list value. Everybody across the board was assessed at the 2023 grand list value, and that's where we should be. If Southview properties are all, none of them have sold even for grand list value. They are all 100% above grand list value, all the sales that have happened in the last year, then there's no evidence to reduce the value of just Southview. We have the whole mobile home park that should have its value dropped. Then you're going to argue Greystone potentially has its value dropped because anybody impacted by the 3 acres stormwater has the same permitting requirement by state statute. So it's that they have all had that their properties impacted by that requirement. So just like anywhere else in town, if I don't get a permit from the state of Vermont and they place a lien on me or they have me in violation, it's a fixable title issue. It's a title defect that you can't fix that truly reduces the value of your property. Because if that's the case, anybody who doesn't give a town of Richmond building permit could have a quote title defect and have a discounted requirement of their grand list value.
I guess the only thing I would say is that Southview, if they've had I guess, was it a special assessment of the HOA?
I can
It hasn't happened yet.
I
It
can
hasn't
speak
happened
to-
yet. But
briefly if I
so there is a
could.
mechanism where that'll affect those values because of.
So briefly, if I could, when Kira talks about the title defect, because they don't have a homeowners association, they can't correct this because they cannot get a wastewater permit for their parcel.
Gotcha.
It has to be the large scale original permit. So they don't have the ability to fix it. And I'm not saying, because we talk about supply and demand, that demand is so high and supply is so tight. Would somebody buy that house knowing that this is going to happen? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And these letters went out in August. So I was looking for sales after August within these four and haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything to say no. I haven't seen anything lingering on the market watching that either. It's just, it's a supply and demand issue. And the reality is we listened to the whole state process and the state said in 2019, it was $75,000 an acre or $70,000 an acre to cure. So I adjusted the cure rate to $100,000 and I kind of did a calculation divided by the properties affected to come up with $14,000. We don't know what it's going to cost. We don't know what kind of credits they get because the whole part of the stormwater, they can get credits if somebody has gutters that go into a rain barrel, then that knocks some of this off. So we just don't know. But our whole point is the grand list is it's April 1st of each year. What did we know on April 1st? We didn't have any evidence showing a reduction. I'm not necessarily sure there's a reduction. I don't know if it affects their marketability because nobody's marketed.
Okay, I'd like to, Paige just had her hand up for a little while. Paige, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry. I would like to have been there tonight, but I am at the hospital with my
daughter who just had her appendix out. So my husband's in there waiting with her to wake up. So apologies for not being there in person. But I saw Kara shaking her head when I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, the assessor.
Lisa.
That Lisa, thank you. That we cannot get a permit individually. And it specifically states that in the letter. The state is requiring us to do it as a group, and that's part of the problem with this rule and law. There's so many unanswered things that the state has not told us how to handle this. I want to speak to a few things that were said last time. And first of all, I did not ask, I'm not the one that asked for this assessment. And I really feel until we know more information, like what this is going to cost, are we going to have to actually do it, that this should just be put on the, put aside. But, I don't know how you all want to deal with that. That's just my opinion. But I also want to say that I like to go through life with empathy, understanding, we're all in this together. And this is one of the things that I really despise about this. And I feel like the state has put this in this position that just creates conflict. It creates us against them. And it just really sucks. Excuse my French. So I heard last time that Greystone got a reduction for this. Is that true or not? No. Okay. So another point, I agree, the flood affected property should probably also have an adjustment. I want to point out that the appraisal grievance period, it was brought up that we should have filed a grievance, but that was a 30-day period started in May of 2024. We didn't get the letters till August, so we couldn't do that. There was also information brought up about different homes that have sold, 955, 930. These are over the past year, but there were also some 780, 672, 705. There is a range of homes in the neighborhood. And it's not really about if we can sell or not. This is how I see it. It's about the encumbrance to the property. I have a friend who owned a property in South Burlington that had this. She was selling it when this was unresolved. She had to put money in escrow. And anyone buying a property, their real estate attorney or their real estate agent is going to say, this is unknown. You need to ask for money in escrow because it's a big unknown cost at this time. So if I was going to sell my house next week and I had to put, $15,000 in escrow, that is money out of my pocket. That affects my buying power for the next thing I do. And a house 5 down from me doesn't have that issue. So, whatever, I just want to bring all these ideas out because these are the things we're dealing with. And then I really don't want to keep comparing us to the mobile home park because the mobile home park is a business. It's a business. It's owned by some property that lives, that is outside. And I understand the people that live there might have to pay this, but I would encourage you to learn about the MHC community program that the state has put together. They've put a ton of money into funding this for mobile home parks. They also did the Green School Initiatives, same thing, funding to protect all Vermonters from having to pay for this for all our schools, to protect low-income Vermonters for having to pay for this by raised rents. If the mobile home park raises rents and says it's because of the stormwater, the legislature needs to know about this because the legislature put money out so that wouldn't happen. So, and then the last thing I'd like to say is it was said, these are people of means. These are people of means that can afford this. I think that's just a real assumption. When I bought my home, it was under $200,000, under $150,000. So I can't afford a $15,000 bill. I just can't. My husband and I both work full time. We have both had second jobs at times to make ends meet. So I just want to put that information out there. And I really hope we can stop fighting against each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Paige. June?
Thank you. I want to echo something that Paige said regarding the fact that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse because we don't really know what the cost will be. And I had a conversation with Senator Chittenden today, and it looks like the legislation is going to move to the floor. And that there's a lot of information in there that I'm not sure we have been considering, including incentives for the town taking full responsibility, money incentives. And so that will help with covering these costs. So I think we're kind of moving too fast without having all the information. And I think if we can get through this legislative session, we'll have a better idea because it also gives us more time. It pushes the time frame out. And with that, there's a lot more work that can be done to figure out resolutions. So I think we're moving too fast on this.
Bart?
June, that's helpful. This is Bart. That's sort of where I was going to. What do we know and what don't we know? And what do we not know that we don't know? But where I was going is we really don't know what the legislature is going to do, but there did seem to be traction in the last month from what I saw that the legislature has woken up to this, and there was some evidence that they would remediate it themselves, remediate the remediation, I guess. And also, when I looked at the initial engineering site plan, it didn't look like, granted, I don't do earth moving or installations for a business, but the project overview didn't look close to this total cost. And so even if we had to do it, partnership of the town and the residents, it didn't seem to me that the total financial burden on individual homeowners would be close to this figure.
That's my estimate.
That's the total for
Except for the 10.35 acres.
David's estimate is, for what it's worth, $60,000. In my head, I'm going $100,000 for the whole thing, split between the town and the homeowners, and then split among the homeowners. If that played out, it would be substantially less. And so whatever you think about the mobile home park, there's also Greystone that has similar costs. So I'm still, since it was in flux, that was kind of my take, since we don't know what the burden will be on any individual property owner. Sort of, June said it more eloquently than I at this point, that we probably don't know enough, and there is some evidence that it might actually go away through legislative action.
Or be mitigated.
Or be substantially mitigated.
Kara?
Paige, I'm so sorry that hope your daughter is okay. I'm so sorry you're at the hospital. I just want to talk about the empathy and pitting people against each other. That's not my intent here. I'm here speaking on behalf of seniors in this community, on fixed income people in this community who have said, if you reduce Southview's grand list values, then that tax burden is distributed amongst all the other people who might also have a problem trying to pay their own taxes and have to work multiple jobs as well. So all I was saying is there has to be proof that it is reducing your value below the grand list value. And if it is not reducing your value of your property, then you should continue to have the same grand list value that was established in 2023 with a townwide reappraisal for everybody. And I did discuss that the fact that the average median amount of the percentage of change, and I think Mr. Filkin agreed with me, was like 63 or 64%, and majority of Southview homes were at, I'm going to say 45%, but definitely below that 63% mark. So the grand list values for Southview proportionally were lowered. So Paige, I hope your daughter's okay. I'm sorry that you're there. And I'm trying to just be fair for everybody in town. I understand you don't have a homeowners association, but it was originally in your deed in those 44 parcels to have a homeowners association. If you chose to, you could have one. But the town is responsible, I think they said, for 1/3 of this cost already. And so that needs to be taken into account by the percentage of 6 acres or 3 acres, or you kicked around different numbers, so I don't know which one you ended up on. Barb.
3.75 acres is the town's responsibility and 6.6 acres is among.
1/3.
Okay,
1/3 is correct.
So we could talk about this all night, but at this point, there's no motion to be made. I just leaned over and asked Josh what we should be doing, and he said, what we're looking for is general consensus. So what are we looking for to say, go ahead, Lisa, with this, or?
Or I think general consensus of the board of should the values be reduced or not? And I think
I guess I would defer to Lisa on this. I mean, I'm not an expert on
Well, I
this stuff,
think the
but-
point is, it's the conversation.
Mhm.
And as June pointed out, there might be, and it's always you're working with an unknown. We don't have any sales showing this is affecting it. We don't have anything on the market that's lingering because of this. So it's really an unknown.
So we
And
have something on paper.
so there's
and a
really no
cost.
market
So-
analysis to show that this might be
Right.
true.
And
So
give-
that would lead me to say no. The other part is to, with Paige, to let you know that every property owner has the ability to grieve their assessment each and every year. And there was not a date on May 1st that had to happen. We don't have the date for grievance yet, but if you send an email to the assessor's office, then I can just flag your property to get a letter when we do have a standard drop dead date for that. So my theory is that it's an unknown. We don't know how it's gonna
Premature.
play out.
Right.
We don't know if it's gonna be overcome by demand. And people will say, yeah, okay, I'm going to, you're gonna sell your house for $650. I would have gone up to $680, but instead I'm gonna give you $660 and put $20,000 in escrow. We don't know how it will play out. And without knowing that,
Okay, my thought is, given as somebody who's been following the legislation pretty closely, I mean, I've testified on it. That the proposed legislation that started in the House and is currently in the Senate. The Appropriations Committee currently has it, the Agency of Natural Resources has had it, and other committees had it. It looks reasonably promising. If it's passed, I think it will give us some relief. But there's still time to amend it. So my thought is, given that there's so much we don't know, and that the law could change things abruptly, I think we should kick this down the road. I'm saying a nod.
Yeah, I mean, there's no equitable answer to this, but I agree with the general consensus that we might be doing too much too soon. We need to give it a little time.
I think that seems reasonable. I mean, I think we don't have any more information.
Right. Okay, then I think we have a consensus page. We're thinking kick it down the road, but we'll give you the final word.
Great, thank you. I would say that's probably the consensus of most of my neighbors, just because until we know more. So I appreciate it. And there was something else I meant to say, but I'm sorry, I'm a little tired tonight. But thank you.
Great, our thoughts are with you, and we hope your daughter recovers quickly, and glad.
Thank
that,
you. Yeah.
Glad you were able to catch it in time.
Yeah,
Alex.
just started to wake up, so I'm gonna go back there again. Okay, thank you. Yep.
My wife was telling me yesterday, she can't think of anybody she knows who's ever had their appendix out. And so
Well,
I'm
now
like,
you know someone.
okay, so Lisa, thank you so
All
much.
right.
Come on back, and we're gonna move on to the next item on our agenda. I will start with your announcement.
Sure. So a couple of things for formerly Corporal Cohen. Last Thursday, I promoted Cohen to Sergeant Cohen. He's showing great leadership and initiative, especially over the last several months, and I think it's a promotion that's well deserved. So congratulations and thank you for your service. Maybe I need to say that again. We're getting the dog situated.
Well, thank Duke for his service.
Oh, no, look at
Now,
that.
Duke did not get promoted.
Oh.
Did Duke get a promotion?
Not as such, I guess. He goes with Cohen.
Senior K-9.
Senior K-9.
Okay, and then we have, there is, in addition to formerly Corporal Cohen being promoted, we want to recognize Sergeant Cohen for his life-saving efforts recently. This is not something that many people know a lot about, and I can't give everybody the details that were expressed by the homeowner in question, but working with Officer Duke over there, Corporal Cohen was in a position to save somebody's life who almost certainly would have died had they not intervened. And this was not just an example of being in the right place at the right time, but using all too uncommon common sense and working very well with his canine partner. So we have prepared a letter of commendation, and we also have a medal for you. And I'd like to read into the record the letter of commendation before we present the two to our.
I'll fix it.
The letter currently says, "Dear Corporal Cohen," we will fix that. On behalf of the town of Richmond Select Board, we write to express our gratitude and heartfelt commendation for your extraordinary life-saving actions on March 12, 2025, in partnership with your canine companion, Duke. Your timely and skillful response in a critical moment not only saved a life, but also reminded all of us of the unwavering commitment and professionalism demonstrated by those who serve and protect our community. Working in tandem with Duke, you exemplified the very best of public service, a combination of training, instinct, and compassion. The bond between a canine officer and their partner is something truly remarkable, and your teamwork during this emergency situation was inspiring. It is a powerful reminder of the invaluable role canine units play in law enforcement and community safety. We are proud to have you and Duke as part of our police department, and we are grateful for the dedication and bravery you bring to your work each and every day. Please accept this letter as a formal commendation and our sincere thanks for your service. With appreciation and respect, Jay Furr, Chair, Select Board, Bart Hill, David Sander, Adam Wood, and Caitlin Pilkins. So.
Thank you.
And here is your medal, very richly deserved. Do we have a small one for Duke?
I don't have to share the medal. I'm sorry.
So Jay, I think you should shake Duke's paw too.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Hang on.
Very good job.
Good job.
Wake up. Very life saving. Thank you so much. And again,
I appreciate it. I'm just glad that we were able to help out and get that person the help they needed.
yeah, that was a very scary situation for everybody involved, and I'm glad that, well, not to go into any personally identifying details, but Duke has not been formally certified as a search and rescue dog, but he did an amazing job that day despite that.
Correct. So one of the things that our original trainer, Tom Radford, had suggested put into him was human site tracking. And we routinely trained that since about 12 weeks old. It is one of those skills that we were able to utilize in this case, and I've learned trust your dog because he will take you where you need to go, especially when you train him right. And so we were out there and he took us right where we needed to go, and it'll help save that life. And a lot of teams train their entire career and never get saved, so it's great to actually be able to utilize it as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And again, our utmost appreciation and thanks, and congratulations also on your promotion to sergeant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
I hate
I'm
to
up next anyway.
You have to leave and come back. Gotta keep this formal.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is this consideration of selling the Tesla police cruiser. We've had that cruiser for a while. It is not really an optimal police vehicle. We've explored that in great depth. There are many things that cannot be fitted to it, like if I recall correctly, a cage, a partition, which means that it's not very good for prisoner transport, or when you've arrested somebody and putting them in the back, there's no barrier.
Correct.
And there, if I recall, also there's no place to mount a rifle, or do I have that right?
Yeah, without the partition, usually it's not onto that partition.
So the only thing it was ever really good for was transportation of the chief. We had a couple chiefs who used it for that. I know that Teslas are theoretically amazing vehicles, but right now it's just sitting out there depreciating and not, in my opinion, seeing much use. So Matt, tell us what you think about what we should do with a Tesla.
So there's a number of different options. Obviously, we could keep it running. I've gotten to the point where it was charged and ready to go back out. We also could go forward and sell it. If we do move forward with selling the car, I would hope that we then plan for a replacement when that need arises next. And then also know that when it does come time to replace a car, we're probably looking about 6 months out but on that process.
Okay. Or we have the option, right now, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with this, our current union contract allows each officer to take their cruiser home so that when they go on the job and they cross the Richmond town boundary, if they don't live here, they're immediately able to go to work and not have to report to the station first. And that is something that's been the case for a while, I believe, but it is not common around surrounding towns. We are kind of the outlier in that respect. So if we did go up to 4 officers, if we were able to hire 3 more, and we only have 3 cruisers, 4 officers, 3 cruisers does not fit. So we would have to either renegotiate with the union to eliminate the take-home cruisers, either permanently or temporarily, lease a cruiser from Heinsberg if they're still understaffed, or look into another option to lease a police cruiser, or, in the long term, buy one. The thought would be that if we do choose to sell the cruiser, we would put the funds into the police equipment reserve to save for the next police cruiser. Matt is proposing starting with a bid of $23,000 minimum floor to bid. And the fund currently has $40,783 in it. So that would, I don't know how close that would come to buying a cruiser market rate, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Close.
Okay, so I know a lot less about vehicles than David does.
I think we should keep it,
Okay,
but it's not my car. I think,
It's not a car assigned to me either at this point. It's one that we have and we can maintain it.
I guess my concern is it's not the oldest, so if there's a legitimate reason to get rid of it because it doesn't function well as a police car. But if we're talking about getting rid of an older car, this is far from the oldest or most beat up car we own, right? So,
Correct.
I guess is our goal to downsize the fleet because we want to be not maintaining cars that we're not using, or is it our goal to get rid of this because it's not a functional police car? I guess just would like some clarity on that.
I can only share my personal thinking. My personal thinking is that it's not really a viable police car. We have to kind of invent. It's a solution in search of a problem, in my opinion. And so my thought is, since we're having to pay to maintain it and we're not using it, and it's unlikely we would be using it in the future, I see no purpose keeping it around, but that's just my 2 cents.
So
what would its use be if it were kept?
I mean, at this point, we would still use it as a patrol car. And be issued out to somebody. We would have the limitations of size and the lack of ability to transport a person in custody. Those are hurdles, but not impossible to continue to use it and as a deployed car. Benefits to that car, it is very inexpensive to keep and maintain because there's a lot fewer moving parts and a lot less gas and energy that goes into keeping that car running. It does have only 23,500 miles, give or take, right now, which we have 2 cars that are older and have more mileage on them.
So what are the pluses and the minuses of keeping it as a patrol car?
Pluses, we have it, it's outfitted. It'll be very little to keep it as status quo until we have someone to drive it.
So as a patrol car, you can't transport with it.
Correct.
What are the other downsides?
Just that's really the biggest one is total size and the lack of ability to transport.
And what are the pluses?
Pluses that we have a car that's pretty much outfitted. I don't have to go buy a new one, go find one. We also have it should last a while. I mean, that car probably should last a while, and it's a very efficient car to use.
Okay, Kara has her hand up and she's about to punch the ceiling if I don't call on her. But Kara, go ahead.
Well, I'm the one who's asked you to.
No, absolutely.
I'm the one who's asked you to sell the Tesla for the past 2 years, and the Tesla's value has dropped in the past 2 years because we've sat here. And we just drive it over to plug it in and then move it out of the way and then drive it back over to plug it in. We've put new tires on it. We've done some maintenance and repairs on it, and we put a whole new decal on it. We spent money on all of that. It is not every officer who has sat in here, with the exception of the chief who bought it to commute from here to Randolph.
Right.
Has said, it feels like you're sitting in a clown car because they have size, they have bulletproof vests, they have guns. It is not, they prefer, let's see what he's driving. What's the car that you're driving?
Dodge Durango.
Okay, they like the bigger, it's more comfortable to get in, they have room for their laptop, he has room for the dog. There's the partition. It's not a true police cruiser. If you actually bring on 4 officers, it's going to be the short straw. Or it's going to be the officer who's not really as active as all the rest of the officers. It is a fact. I mean, that's what they've sat there and said. So I'm pushing for us. I really wish we had sold it before the burning of the Teslas and before all of that stuff was going on. We have a cruiser that is sitting in Heinsberg right now. We're storing a cruiser in Heinsberg still. If we really get 3 officers, I think the whole community would support buying a new vehicle. That is a vehicle that it could be used for all police purposes and not just as a commuter car. And I'm not the one who called it a clown car. One of the interim chiefs sat up there and said, I can't drive it. My body doesn't fit in it. I don't think this officer would fit as comfortably in it either. He looks like he's got some height to him. So I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm trying to say it devalues the longer it sits there just because we want to have a Tesla in our parking lot.
Okay, there is a note in the chat that I don't see the top of. Who is this? Alexis.
Raise your hand.
Alexis, go ahead. If you want to unmute.
Yes, hi. I just think that a reason we should sell the Tesla is because of its connection to Elon Musk. And we need to, we're all aware of what's going on, and this has been a very effective tool at getting through to him, that the public is not happy with him. And I think that, the Tesla has become a statement. And what side are we on as a town? Are we on his side or we're on the side of democracy? So I just think that this really needs to be part of this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Alexis. Any other comments? I mean, the motion that's in the packet is to sell it. So if we don't wish to sell it, no motion needs to be made. If a motion were made to sell it, I would vote in favor of it. Just because I see it as a white elephant that's doing us very little good. Is it hurting us? No, but it's not helping us.
I guess I fully agree. I just also would extrapolate that to the other 2 cruisers.
Exactly.
And it doesn't drive, so.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with selling the Tesla, but I don't see how we can justify selling the Tesla and not getting rid of at least one of the other cars that have over 100,000 miles on them
And we will likely be needing more cruisers.
don't get
not
started up
less.
and have oil not pumping through them for weeks on end and all this stuff, knowing like I have a truck I don't drive in the winter, and every spring it takes me days to get it going.
Should we rent them out for like promise and things?
just don't. Yeah.
Whatever your high school kid
I don't
wants a
think we're
police
gonna have to
cruiser
come with
for
that
prom.
plan now. I'm in favor of selling it. Broadly speaking, because I think that we had, not because it's a Tesla, I'm in favor of selling it because I think we have too many vehicles relative to the recruiting trajectory we are on. How is that? And then if Matt and many officers have said it's just not functional, I think it's great. The cost savings are awesome, and we should explore an electric vehicle going forward when we need to. We need to look at it from the perspective of making it functional, and that might not have, the functions requirements have changed. But I do think we need to have a comprehensive discussion about what our fleet looks like, and just selling the Tesla without having that conversation. It's kind of, it's missing the point in my mind.
Okay.
I can give you a status on all of our cars at the moment. Do you want that?
Okay.
Our oldest car is a 2019 Ford Explorer that has 54,000 miles on it. That's the one that's in Heinsberg. It is ready to go to be utilized as a patrol car. Everything's in it. Everything that needs to be in it is there. There's a 2020 Dodge Durango that I am driving. It currently has about 77,000 miles on it. That car is actually fine to keep going. It basic maintenance right now. There's nothing wrong with it. We have the 2021 Tesla, and that is the one that has the hardest to get moving all the time. But I do have it up and running and moving now. And like I said, it just has the lack of a partition to be a patrol car. Overall size, and if Kara's right, I am a big guy. I do fit in it, I get in and out of it, but it's not the easiest car to get in and out of. But that is a factor. But some people like them, and that's the preference. I think it's almost same in population that you'll see in officers as you will in the public. Some people like Teslas and love them. I have very little opinion either way on the Tesla itself. More of it, the lack of functionality as a patrol car right now. And the one of the nicest cars right now is our 2022 Dodge Durango, which is all fully set up to go with only 5,000 miles on it. And that one's good to go. And I utilize that. That one has a hitch on it. So that speed car can have the mover that you see moving around. That's the one car we have that can move that car around,
Okay.
So it gets used.
I think so we have 4 vehicles, and I know we're gonna hire more officers. I'm putting out that positive intention there, where it's going to happen. And I think that we have maybe at least 1 too many vehicles. And when you look at the full fleet of vehicles, you know, I would agree that looking at some of the older vehicles and the mileage on those, and understanding that those would probably be, you know, more likely the car that we would have picked if we didn't have a differentiation in cars here. However, this car is worth something right now. And if we don't need a 4th vehicle that doesn't serve the full purpose of the job, and we're looking to eliminate one, we could get some money off of this so that when we're ready to buy the 4th vehicle, we still have the other ones, which will go through their normal cycle of being used until we cannot use them. And then we will be able to assess what that 4th vehicle should be, whether it's a different EV that actually fits the needs of the police force or otherwise.
Okay, so I'd like to make a procedural note. It's 10 o'clock. We have quite a few more things on our agenda. And if there's no urge for making a motion, we could just go on. But does anybody wish to make a motion regarding this cruiser?
Sure. I'm trying to pull up the motion.
This is Caitlin. I moved to sell the Tesla police cruiser. It's at a minimum bid of $23,000.
Is Bart, I will second that.
Okay, so given that we have a motion on the floor, we can keep the debate going. Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, some people may think that I love the Tesla. I don't. I recognize that it's a small car. I would point out that out of the 4 operators of that car that we've had since we owned it, 2 of them loved it. Kyle loved it, and Chief Cambridge loved it. The other 2 operators of the car were Matt and Ben Herrick. Ben Herrick is a big guy, and you know, he might have had other disagreements with Ben about how to operate our police department. My issue with the Tesla is that we bought it. I think we paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $65,000 for it. And if we sell it for 25, we've lost $40,000 worth of value out of it, and it still has a great deal of value left. It still could be useful. So it may not be the most useful car as a patrol car, but we still don't know what our police department is going to look like, even next year, you know, with Heinsberg. Really, if we had a kind of a sane look at how we're doing policing, it's not just Richmond, it's Richmond and Heinsberg. And they have several cars over there as well. And they use them for different things. They've got a pickup truck. They have different kinds of vehicles for different kinds of uses. So it seems to me premature to try to get rid of any of our cars until we know what kind of police department we're going to have. So that's my issue. It's more of a money issue than anything else. I will point out also that when I did an analysis on on the cost of that car, of operating that car. We saved $5,000 in fuel costs in 1 year on that car when it was used by Kyle. So the fuel cost savings was substantial. And the repairs on it have all been because of lack of use, which I would commend. I guess it's now Sergeant Cohen. I would commend Sergeant Cohen for starting to use our vehicles and the speed wagon. It's wonderful that we have this equipment that's beginning to be used, has been sitting idle for so long. To my mind, it's just premature to make the decision tonight. Thank you.
Karen? Did you have anything else you want to say?
No, I was reading.
No, you had your hand up a little while ago.
The only thing I would say is you've been trying to staff your police force for the past 6 years. You have one officer. You're working with Heinsberg. They don't use the Tesla. It's still sitting in the parking lot. They can use our cars. You've already said that before. They choose not to either. It's sitting there. It gets devalued every year. It sits there. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. I believe the motion was made by Caitlin Filkins and seconded by Bert Hill. The motion was to move to sell the Tesla police cruiser and to set a minimum bid of $22,000.
One more quick question. One more. If we were to downsize to 2 cars, knowing that realistically on our hiring trajectories, we're not going to have 3 officers and need another one.
Although we do have a candidate in process. One.
3 cars. Downsizing to 3.
So if we were to downsize to 2 or get rid of another one, is there another one? Is there any that have mechanical issues? Obviously, there's physical limitations on the Tesla, but
The next one I would say would be the 2019 Ford Explorer would be the next one to
and then
replace.
what's a reasonable, like just super off the hip? I have no idea what used police cars sell for. Are we talking 3,000, 10,000 or 30,000?
I would have to go back and look
We're
at
talking
that.
like single thousands of dollars, most likely.
Your name is Elwood Blues.
The last one went for 5.
But this has 54,000 miles on it. The other ones you've sold have over 100,000 miles on it. So it's twice as much mileage on the cars that you were unloading before. So this one has 54,000 miles on it, that 2019. He's driving the one that has 77,000 miles on it. So it's definitely got some life in that 2019.
Any other questions or comments?
So we're counting the other 3 being serviceable for enough years that we're going to keep them. So like a year from now, or 2 year and a half from now, we hire another 3 officers. We're thinking that we're going to keep that 2019 serviceable to that point. That's our plan.
That seems to be
okay.
Now, and this would be my question is like, what's our capital, like your question is almost the same. What is our capital plan for the next car to be replaced?
Be the 2019.
I mean, would it be 2027, FY27 to look at it?
We skip
How many officers do we have?
Well, I know, that's what I'm asking.
We get 3. Let's assume 3 because that's
In the budget, Jay, if you actually got 3 officers, you could go buy a car with what you have in your reserve.
But we'd have to order it because it would be.
My only concern is that we sell the Tesla. It's great. Get rid of it. We have 3. And then a year from now, we have 3 officers in this 2019. I know how bad cars are when they sit. All of a sudden, we're in for $3,000 or $4,000 in brakes and a bunch of other crap because we need to get this thing working again. So we could easily spend as much on fixing it up as we would have sold it for.
Yeah.
And then we have by police car standards, an old car that then costs a bunch of money the next year. So this isn't pushing against the Tesla, but it's just, I think
It's
it's
something
back
we
to
need to
the
be
point, we need
thinking
a
of.
longer term plan here.
We do need a longer term plan. And we are, what were you going to work out when we have?
And it's not that I question the capital plan, Josh. It's more a plan that takes into account the lack of use and how much wear and tear that actually puts on stuff. So I don't know if
That's a
that's
wild
something.
card, yeah.
It really is. It's something we haven't really dealt with a ton. So maybe it's not to say this is something that you're going to just figure out, but it sounds like that's the responsibility that would come along with a promotion. But anyway, okay, that's it.
Yeah, where is it? Trying to find it quick. Sorry, I'm not moving super fast. Police.
Right, and I've expressed that concern that I want to make sure that we have funds to replace a car if needed.
Yeah.
Because, we could get something that like this car, I'm trying to get all the cars running at least once a week.
Well, you just might just to drive them around and look ominous. Somebody.
But I mean, just really to get them moving and going once a week keeps oil flowing and keeps the
Can we loan
cars.
them out as a driver's ed car?
Maybe take the flashbang grenades out of the back.
It looks like the next replacement is in fiscal year 27, if I'm reading this correctly,
So.
which actually,
That's next year.
That'd be the next.
yeah,
We
next.
review it every year.
Yeah,
so.
and we push it out every year, it feels like. The only thing I might add to the motion is, and to deposit the proceeds into the police reserve fund. We would want to,
Is that an acceptable?
if
amendment?
if it passes, then we would want to make sure we do that, I would think.
Amend the motion.
Yeah, I'll amend the motion.
Okay, so our motion is to move to sell the Tesla police cruiser. Set a minimum bid of $23,000 and place the resulting funds into the police equipment reserve to save the next police cruiser. Motion was made by Kate Belkin, seconded by Bart Helm. And please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, nay?
Bart, aye.
Adam, nay.
They are. Okay. Caitlin, the other Caitlin is with us. Caitlin, other Caitlin, you guys should have a cage match for rights to that name. Caitlin Littlefield is our town forester and the tree warden, I guess.
Thank you.
And we
Can I
have
get
a
a picture of
request to use funds from the Conservation Reserve Fund to treat town ash trees for the emerald ash borer. The current balance of the Conservation Reserve Fund is $372,758. This request was recommended by the Conservation Commission. Caitlin, would you like to discuss this in more detail?
Yes, you bet. I can chime in. I'm grateful too that Judy is here. Not only is she here representing the RCC, but she is our state entomologist, so is even more, has more expertise on this than I do. But yes, so I am requesting funds to re-engage limb walker tree services, who we've worked with before, in treating 19 ash trees within the village. So there are some in front of the building that you're sitting in, one across the street, a number down along Church Street, one on Cochran's, one at ACF. So there are a handful within the town and sort of some outerlying roads that are healthy and will continue to be healthy so long as we continue to treat them with this naturally derived insecticide that is injected into the trees once every 2 to 3 years at varying dosage levels, depending on the pressures that the emerald ash borer is exerting on the ash population. And right now we're really in the midst of the invasion and really kind of a hot spot within the state. And so it's recommended that we continue to treat them every 2 years at a high dose. And so therefore requesting $4,800 from the Conservation Reserve Fund to carry out treatment in next month. Judy, is there anything else you'd want to add around that?
No, thank you. I think you summarized that quite well. And the Conservation Commission does support this and thinks it's important for the town. Thank you.
Caitlin, I just have one quick question. For anyone, you pointed out that we're in kind of a hot spot of the emerald ash borer invasion right now. And I'm assuming the majority of ash trees are on private property. Can you point out any resources for anyone who might be listening if they are interested in treating their trees on their own private property to help with this problem?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. Judy, would VT Invasives be the best one to go to still?
Yeah, you can go to vtinvasives.org. There's a whole emerald ash borer page and it has recommendations for homeowners or woodlot owners. And another good resource would be Urban and Community Forest program, if you just search urban and community forestry. And I believe they maintain a list of arborists that people can get in touch with to treat their trees.
And at this point, it does, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, but it does seem like most arborists are willing to, or so long as they're certified applicators, will treat and are quite familiar with this. So I think that most of the folks you might contact around the area are probably already actively doing those treatments, but it should happen within the next few weeks or month or so as the trees are starting to leaf out, so that that insecticide can get sucked up through the vascular tissue into all the tissues of the trees. So if anybody's looking to treat their trees, they should engage an arborist sooner rather than later.
Okay, well, Caitlin, Judy, thank you both for coming. I certainly agree that this is a good use of funds and very timely. And I thank you especially for staying here until 10:15 at night to make this request. Does anybody wish to ask any further questions, or does someone want to make a motion?
Jay, this is Bart. I'd like to move to approve the request to use $4,800 in conservation reserve funds to cover the cost of treating town ash trees as described in the proposal dated April 19th, 2025.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
We have a motion made by Bart Hill, seconded by David Sander to approve the request to use $4,800 in conservation reserve funds to cover the cost of treating town ash trees as described in the proposal dated April 19th, 2025. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is in relation to the to-do list for the town fire department. Would you like to introduce the topic before passing it to Jerry, or?
Sure. So this comes out of the needs assessment report that we had and the special meeting that we had to discuss the report and some new to-dos that came up from that report. So I've met with Assistant Chief Jerry Levesque twice over the last couple of weeks. He's also done a lot of work with the fire department members to help sort of crystallize what we have already done and then get some good action plans for items that we need to start working on. Some of them have already been accomplished. They're fairly easy. Others are going to be accomplished soon. Some of them are a little bit longer. So there's, some midterm, early term and longer term goals. I want to thank Jerry for his sense of urgency really in jumping on these and getting it done. And want to welcome Chief Dennis Guile back. He's been out with an injury for a while. And I know you would have been involved in this process as well, but you were injured for a bit and it's good to see you back in person.
Okay, do you want to bring up the to-do list? Sure.
I just wanted to clarify. So I recused myself in the meeting that my father was here. Mostly because he was here and talking. Don't feel like I need to recuse myself now that he's not involved, but I'm open to feedback on that.
Well, I don't believe there's a motion to be made on this. And I don't see any reason why she can't participate in the discussion. Do you think of any? Anybody?
This Bart, I can't see, I can see a conflict of interest under those circumstances, but I don't think that Caitlin needs to recuse herself from any further action forever about the fire department.
I think that's reasonable.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to bring
Okay,
that
so
up.
Jerry, Dennis. Thank you guys for staying so late.
Yeah, really.
No, we took the list that we talked about and we went down through the list, and if you look on the board, you can see the list. We've done quite a bit. We've got quite a bit more to go, as Josh stated. It's a slow process, but some of the information that he asked for, we did have. And it was unfortunate we didn't present that at the time. And it's, we do pretty much all our tests that are required every year for the SCBA, the compressor fit test. We're lacking a little bit on physicals, but we have a plan about doing that. I didn't know if you had a chance to read this. I know you guys have been pretty, I won't say stressed out, but pretty busy. And some of the things that he asked were posted. We didn't have them posted. We had them around by the water cooler instead of out front. So they're still there, but the MSDS sheets are all done for the station. As soon as the rover gets here, we'll take the old paint and stuff and it'll be gone from fire station. As I said, it's still work in progress. Yeah, he talked a lot about foam. We had a discussion tonight at the station. We really don't have a good place to keep it right now. And if it freezes, then we'd have to buy new. It's got a 20-year life. If it gets over 104 degrees, it's no good. So we talked tonight about moving it out and putting it on a new rescue truck in October 27th. That way we'll be inside of the truck. So we don't have to worry about Mother Nature ruining our foam.
We'll just have to worry about Mother Nature for about a dozen other things,
Yeah.
but not the phone.
questions or, I mean,
So you guys got a lot of stuff done, Jerry. You guys got a lot of stuff done in a quick period. This is good momentum. Yeah.
yeah,
this is awesome.
we're going, I'm trying to.
Let's get momentum going, right? I mean, but this is
The other
awesome.
guys to help
Yeah.
me, and it seems to be working so far.
So you probably said this, and I probably tuned you out, but regarding the physicals,
Yes,
has everybody had a physical within the calendar that they're supposed to have them?
I actually talked to, the place that gives us physicals, and they gave me a complete rundown on who has physicals. Most of the guys had them in 22, so we need to have them done this year.
Okay,
And they suggested we add a few things to the physicals that we weren't doing before, like an AKG, maybe blood work, maybe a cancer screening. I haven't talked to Josh or Dennis too much about that because he's been laid up, but
the cancer screen because of all the chemicals they're exposed to?
chemicals are what everybody's exposed to through firefighting,
Yeah,
plus normal life. So it's pretty much just a blood draw and they ask you a bunch of questions.
and well, I'm grateful for you putting all this work in and getting this done. Caitlin, Bard, David, any questions?
I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you're saying you're working with the other guys to do it. I think it's great to do it community wise.
Above and beyond what you have from us now, is there anything else that you need for support on this? Beyond what you're getting? Or anything that's come up?
No, at this point, no, we just gotta muddle through it and see what comes out of it.
Sure.
I've been talking to Prescott, who's the Heinsberg Fire Chief,
Oh, great.
and Aaron Collette, who's the Williston Fire Chief. There's a company called Redline that comes in and cleans our fire gear professionally. And they also check your vapor barrier in your coat. And they'll fix minor tears or anything on your bunker gear.
Cool.
And
Great, yeah.
Prescott and I are gonna try to get a deal with them, so
Nice.
they charge $500 to come to your town. Then that's travel from wherever they are. If we can get two towns together, then maybe we can cut.
Would Bolton want to get in on it?
I haven't brought it to Mike yet. I'm still exploring it,
Okay,
and so that's it's $150 right now per set.
Mhm.
So we have roughly 15 sets. Heinsberg has 35 sets. They said they can do that in 6 hours.
Wow.
They have their own washers, their own dryers, their own inspectors.
Is it like an annual thing or a couple times a year?
We
How
have
does that?
to figure that out.
Okay. I
Maybe
wasn't
it's
sure. I just-
annual,
yeah,
maybe it's every 2 years.
cool.
I'm not sure what other places recommend.
Yeah.
And
They probably recommend more often, right?
oh yeah, my money.
about the hazmat training, I know that it says that no firefighter or Richmond firefighter is currently qualified for full hazmat training, and I am absolutely certain that it's very involved training. But right now you're having to call the state hazmat team. How often have you had to call them in, and what's the response time?
Thank God we haven't had to call them in years.
Good.
Last time we called them was when the creamery had a ammonia leak. And that was back in the 1980s.
With all the tankers we have coming through in I-89 full of chemicals, I consider
And
us
the
lucky
railroad.
that- Sorry,
And the railroad.
and the railroad. We're very lucky we haven't had to call them.
So we're most of the guys that go through classes are not operation awareness.
Mhm.
And then if you work from there, you want to go through operation, which is another 20 to 30 hours. And if you want to be a full-blown technician, it's a 40-hour refresher every year.
Wow. Yeah, well, we know that to do the job you guys do, that's a scary amount of training. That's part of what I guess discourages people from signing up. But thank you all for being so proactive about this. It's very good to stay ahead of things.
And the other big one that I've been working on is the full-time departments. They have a program that is really actually cheap after looking at it, that we can put on a computer. So if we go to the block and we get back to station, you can put in how big the building is, where the entrances and exits are. The nearest hydrant, what size water line, what type of system it has for fire system. But
That's great.
yeah, so it's just to have somebody go back and type all that in. And then eventually have a computer in the truck. So we're going to Adam Wood's house. Just type in his address and it will tell us the
Kinds of
size of this
info.
house, how many people live in this house, where the closest water source would be,
Well,
and what the recommended mutual aid for that would be.
Cool.
that's great.
Like known hazards, all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it's better to arrive forewarned before you walk in on some hazardous situation you didn't think of.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So this is, things that hopefully in the future we'll look for. But,
I'll say I'm impressed. There's a lot here between the very straightforward physical stuff, equipment and policy kinds of things. So thanks for organizing it.
Yeah, I think
thank Josh, he helped me.
I just typed. You did all the work.
I'm just impressed with how much you've been chatting with some of the other stations around too. And you said, Heinsberg and some of the other bigger stations use some other stuff too. And like that, what a resource and great. I know that takes time to do, so.
Good point.
Richmond works really well with the neighboring departments and just to let you know, we're gonna be covering South Jericho from July 7th.
Right.
For 45 days. While they do the bridge on Jericho.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We have a message in the chat from Trevor Brooks. Thank you for all the work you've done. I would like to echo all the praise from the others.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So do we maybe set a check-in back here in July, a couple months from now, just to make sure we're staying on top of things?
Cool.
Does that work for you guys? Right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for staying late too.
Good to see you in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 4 items left and the next one is probably the only one that will take any time. It is a consideration of approving quitclaim deeds on Tilden Avenue for a stormwater line that will be abandoned after the new line is constructed. Do you want to take a stab at this, Grant? Running through this?
Yeah, I'll do that here in a sec.
So this, we already talked about this, right, Josh? And this was the amended.
Yeah, this is the amended, so let me just pull a map and find the map quick. It'll be a lot easier if I can find the map. There we go. Orientation. Okay. So this is for the Tilden Waterline project that we talked about a few times. It's this 100-year-old combined stormwater wastewater pipe that the town has assumed responsibility for in other instances, and this instance is no different. It's overflowing, it needs to be rerouted, it's basically failing. So we had a previous easement here, you can see this dark portion here, that was from some previous work that we had done. So we put in a quitclaim deed to get release the town's responsibility for the pipe within this black portion. At the last meeting, it was brought up that line D here is actually that same pipe that we're going to leave in place, and we want to make sure that we no longer have responsibility for that pipe, even though it's outside of the easement area. We have 2 quitclaims. One is for the Nickerson property. There is, actually, gosh darn it, there is pipe here on there. Why did I go over there? All right, well, I updated the quitclaim deed. I'm gonna have to double check the Nickerson one because the Witters has this very clearly right here at the end of the easement area. So we had the attorney add some wording that basically says by their acceptance of this, they agree that the town no longer has any responsibility to the old stormwater pipe marked in D at their house. Now that I look at this more closely though, I'll have to see if that's already been abandoned. It might have been, because my understanding was this was the new route of the pipe that comes into here. I'll have to ask Pete about this part of D here, which is on Nickerson's. I didn't think they had any part of that pipe. I thought it was just this end here, because that's all we've really been talking about. So if we need to get a amended quitclaim for Nickerson, I'll come back and let you know, but Witters should be good to go.
So there's nothing under any structures, right?
Right, this was rerouted when the house, I think, was expanded at some point.
Okay.
And my understanding was, that's why I didn't even look over here because it comes straight from here down to here to this basin here. So I have no idea why there's even another one going over here. But I'll follow
How
up.
sure are we that those pipes are where this map says they are?
I think these here were very sure. I
Okay.
know that Pete and the Witters are very clear on these. This one, that one is a little new to me because I think we're tying into this structure here. So I don't know why we never abandoned that one or what was going on with that.
Because we're looking for things as recently as the late nineties that we put in that aren't where
So,
they said we were.
Based on our conversation last time, the drainage pipe that's shown on the Nickerson's property was gonna stay attached to the stormwater, correct? And they were gonna use it as a tile drain?
Yeah, it was,
Just want to clarify that they can keep it in place.
yeah, they can keep it in place. We just don't want responsibility for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and my understanding was it came from here down through to here and we were gonna reconnect along this side. So that's where I thought, okay, this is the last catchment. We're gonna reconnect to here. Witters just can keep this in place, which runs through the blacked out area. It does cross over on Nickerson's. They're working on an agreement between the two of them to make sure that that stays in place because it does provide some yard drainage for the
Two
Witterses.
different drainage pipes? I guess you gotta clarify.
Well, that's why I don't know what this, and I just never looked closely enough. I didn't even think to look over here on D. I should have until tonight. Because I thought it all just came straight through to here, and that's why we had the easement here, because it was all coming from the back of the Witters' house down to here.
Like on the map we saw last time, that wasn't, something was different there, whatever, because I feel like you would have, we talked about this enough and you pointed out at all the stuff, you would have caught it, Josh.
I don't know, but clearly I didn't. So
I
it's,
remember you pointing at like all the different stuff and.
yeah, and I, for some reason I looked right over that. So I think you could approve the Witters' quitclaim. I'll go back to work on the Nickerson one and I'll come back with an update.
So which
Updated
one
deed.
should we leave out of the motion? What based on the address?
Oh, that's a good question. Which one should we leave out of the addresses based on the address?
Are the Witters at 86 or 102? You should know that from memory, right?
I remember the numbers. Right, 86 at the corner by. The east end.
Oh, you know what? I know where it is. I'll give it real quick.
So you want to approve the Witters tonight? We're just not sure if they're 86 or 102.
I just gotta make sure that that line D on Nickerson, if we
Oh,
want to
okay.
abandon that too, and we very well may. I just, like I said, didn't catch it. Let me. Hold
Want to
up.
bring it back?
What's that?
Is this time sensitive? You just want to bring the whole
We can
thing?
bring the whole thing back.
Let's do
Sure.
that.
Yeah, I don't think that we don't have the contractor scheduled just yet. And even if we did, I'm sure we can make it happen. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll bring it back. Gosh, this is getting to be like a water and sewer policy. We'll just talk about it 17 times before we admit it.
It was like an old friend though.
Oh, it was, I mean, I do miss it. It leaves me up at night sometimes. But now I got a new friend, this easement. Okay.
Okay, 3 to go, and then our executive session. The next one is our usual approval of liquor licenses. There are 2 licenses being requested. Stone Corral has applied for a first and third class license. Which is just, the first is to serve beer and wine on site, third class is to serve spirits on site. Cumberland Farms is applying for a second class license, which is to sell beer and wine to consume off-prem. Now, I have a question, Josh, because I know Stone Corral also sells beer in their coolers by the door, for you to take with you. Do they not also need a second class, or is that on a different schedule?
Must be on a different schedule. This is the only one that they applied for. Right, because I didn't miss one, did I?
I'm not saying you did, it's just,
Well-
sometimes these are on different schedules.
They might be, but it's a good question. After missing the other pipe.
Does a first or a third class license cover second class?
No,
No, I don't think so. I think it's 2 separate licenses.
It's possible that the reason they're off schedule is because they started serving on-prem.
Yeah.
And then after some time, they decided they wanted to sell or take home.
Yeah, they're just out of phase.
Schedule.
So we had third class here. I'm just double checking the. And first class, yep. Stone Corral. And an outside consumption permit. And those are the three that Suzanne gave me, because they come to the town clerk first.
Well, we
So-
haven't approved these, but we should check on that.
Yeah, I'll ask her.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve first and third class liquor licenses and an outside consumption permit for Stone Corral Brewery LLC.
Does Bart, I'll second that.
And please take your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve a second class liquor license for Cumberland Farms of Vermont.
Is Bart, I'll second that.
A motion from David Sanders, second by Bart Hill. Go ahead and state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Second to last item on the main agenda, consideration of approval of an access permit. This is new access for lot will be created by Subdivision. Road foreman Peter Goss has inspected the proposed location and has approved it, noting that it has necessary sight lines and a culvert is not needed. Could you pull this? You got it up.
Yep, I get it.
Oh, so this is, yeah. I apologize. This is Cindy's land. Is this way up in Snipe Ireland or?
Yeah, way up here in Snipe Island. I think he's subdividing his own land. I think he's one of the last lots on the public road there, if not the last, I believe. So he's got a new curb cut in this area, and Pete's checked the sight line and says he's good to go.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve access permit number AC 2025-03.
Caitlin will second.
Motion from David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins to approve access permit number AC 2025-03. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Last item, which does not require a motion, is review of Richmond rescue statistics. Do you want to bring this up and call any high points?
Yeah, we'll do that. I'm not really prepared for high points, but
Make something up.
Well,
as usual, they do a great job.
yeah, I'll just say, kudos to Richmond Rescue. They're very beneficial to the community, and the community is much better for having them.
Actually, looks like Mike has called out a couple of high points.
The great thing about a separate rescue entity is we enjoy the benefit of their service without having to manage them.
And they seem to do an excellent job managing them. Looks like business is really going up. 35 more calls in the first quarter than the previous year. 84 transports in 1 month, which is a record.
Wow.
Not good.
And they were able to handle their own mutual aid by getting a second ambulance to the road 10 times.
That's 2.5 transports a day.
Yeah. And they've also increased the gear they've got on board. They are better able to administer oxytocin for slow bleeding after childbirth. That Vermont is the first state in the nation to authorize this, with Richmond Rescue helping push for it. And shortly after the protocol was implemented, one of their advanced DMTs successfully used it following discovery of a healthy newborn. Also, they rescued a dog.
Yay.
Yeah. No human backcountry rescues, but they were called to assist an exhausted dog. And the dog had self-rescued, but was probably glad to see the humans.
I'm really surprised there were no backcountry rescues this year with the amount of snow that we had.
Well, we certainly,
Right.
other towns had them.
They must have, yeah, right. I'm just surprised no one wandered off of Bolton and got in trouble.
And there were 3 last week in New Hampshire, people who just went into reckless conditions with no thought of their own safety.
geez.
Sneakers and shorts.
It's kind of counterintuitive, but I think when the weather gets bad, people actually are more cautious. It's like the winters where there's no snow down here. And snow in the mountains,
think
people are like,
that's
oh, it's all fine. And then they get in a bind.
bad
So I
could
think
it be?
Yeah,
the consistent cold weather kind of shocks people into being cautious.
that's
It's,
true.
the spring and the fall are always what really get people.
Yeah, because
Because
it's
they
spring.
they forget the temperature change. I guess I was thinking more of skiers who just go out of bounds, thinking, oh, there's good powder over here, and then realize quickly,
Miles away from it.
and they're in waist deep powder and they have to go uphill. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, yeah. I mean, it's this time of year when it's 15 degrees on top of the mountain and you leave in shorts. Yeah,
Or it's 40 degrees on top of the mountain and then you get up there and it drops to 15 or.
yeah, something like that, but you're right.
Well, if anybody wants to read more detailed statistics, there is a link in the report that we're sharing. That I encourage anybody listening to this now or later to investigate. We are beyond fortunate to have them, considering how hard it is to find volunteers for many emergency services these days. I'm sure that Richmond Rescue has to work hard to keep everybody up to speed, but still, they never come to us saying we're in dire straits. We just contribute once a year and enjoy the benefits all year.
Yeah, they are pretty great.
Okay. Moving on, we have 3 purchase orders. And the motions are in the packet. Our first purchase order, which is being brought up, is purchase order 5220 to the county of Chittenden, such as it is, in the amount of $30,315 to pay for the county judge tax. That we help fund the judges. And in case you're wondering, we are paying a very small percentage compared to the other towns. Burlington and South Burlington are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their share.
Mr. Chair, this is David. I move to approve purchase order number 5220 to County of Chittenden in the amount of $30,315 to pay for the county judge tax.
Caitlin, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion for David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins, to approve purchase order 5220 to the county of Chittenden in the amount of $30,315 to pay for the county judge tax. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, our second purchase order for 5253 to Lafayette Highway Specialties in the amount of $31,936 for replacement of a section of guardrail on Southview Drive, repairs to guardrail on East Hill Road and at the intersection of Heinsberg Road and Huntington Road. Any questions about this purchase order?
So this is the guardrail on Southview that we've been recognizing needed to be replaced for like 10 years now, but we put off to the next year, to the next year, to the next year.
I think it's the same one. It's been in the capital plan for a while and we have enough money to do it. So
This is the one that has half the number of uprights it's supposed to have.
I think that's right.
Improperly installed.
Yeah,
And it's all gonna be,
all gonna be fixed.
yay. I move to approve purchase order number 5253 to Lafayette Highway Specialties in the amount of $31,936 for replacement of a section of guardrail on Southview Drive and repairs to guardrail on East Hill Road and at the intersection of Heinsberg Road and Huntington Road.
Thank you, David.
Is Bart, I'll second it.
A motion made by David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill to approve purchase order 5253 to Lafayette Highway Specialties, $31,936 for guardrail replacement and repairs. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye.
Glad to see those getting done.
That third and final purchase order is 5281 to UVM Home Health and Hospice in the amount of $12,500 for the annual appropriation. Any questions about this? Like, what do we get for this?
Yeah, what is that?
Oh, this is well, it's voted on by the voters, the annual appropriations, UVM Health and Hospice for the work they do to help Richmond residents.
And so we are just officially cutting this is to cut the check
This
that
is
the
the-
voters already approved.
This is the check. You got it.
Caitlin, I move to approve purchase order number 5281 to UVM Home Health and Hospice in the amount of $12,500 for the annual appropriation.
This is David, I'll second.
A motion made by Caitlin Filkins, seconded by David Sander to approve purchase order 5281 to UVM Home Health and Hospice in the amount of $12,500 for the annual appropriation. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Next, we go to our warrants. Does anybody have any questions about the warrants in the packet as presented?
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the warrants as presented.
Caitlin, I'll second.
Motion from David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins to approve the warrants as presented. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Next, and almost last, we have the minutes The minutes were from the meeting that two of us bailed out on.
Yeah, thanks for
Not
that.
competent to vote on the minutes, so we probably haven't missed either.
And actually, I messed this one up too. It should have said 421, so I can just to
Look at those
properly warn it.
Yeah.
I'll make sure we do that.
You turned this over to your kids, haven't you?
I let Duke do it this time.
Okay. What, do we have any items for the next agenda? Following up on the Class B liquor license for Stone's Throw, following up on the quitclaim deeds.
I missed something. Why are we not moving the approval of the minutes?
They were warned at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I messed up the date. At the next meeting too, we'll have the annual appointments for committees, which always takes a good half hour or so. We'll have the final presentation of the Cochrane Road study. It's the scoping and corridor study. I think we also have a speed study for Cochrane Road that'll dovetail nicely into that conversation. I hope to have the leases amended by then. We'll probably also talk about highway culvert projects.
Yeah.
There's a number that we've submitted to FEMA for mitigation. I think there's about 6 of them. And occasionally we hear from people that are affected by those culverts. Well, why isn't it moving faster? So Pete and I thought, let's bring it to the board to kind of give a public update of where we are. And these are all projects that are $100,000, $200,000. So they're not something we just tackle right away.
I'm getting increasingly pessimistic about FEMA ever paying those, given that they told Arkansas, which is about as Republican as they get.
Yeah.
Wait, FEMA's still a thing?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They had a disastrous storm and flood or something.
Tornadoes.
Tornadoes, that's it. And they told them, sorry, there's no disaster money for you.
But
Sarah
don't worry,
Huckabee
because the
Sanders
states will take
submitted
it
the
over.
declaration and Trump rejected it.
Yes.
That's, yeah, I mean, my only, I think that from 24, we're good because it's already been declared and probably funded, but you never know. And when we have the next one.
NPR
nervous.
was already funded too.
What?
I think we've got to keep in mind is that when we're planning the number of disasters, we need to keep
We
in
need to
mind.
reduce them now because there's less money.
Right.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
I take that as my action item.
Okay, so, if you think of other items for the agenda, please don't hesitate to call Josh at home day or night. Our final item on the agenda.
I'm either here or at the Little League baseball field, so you'll find me one of those two places.
Okay,
Gavin have a phone, we can call him if you don't pick up.
Gavin will probably do a better job than me, because tonight I've definitely flubbed a few.
our final item is a possible executive session, motions for which are in the packet. This would be an executive session to discuss an employee, and therefore must be conducted in executive session. Would anybody like to make the motions? They start on line 420 of the memo.
Mr. Chair, I move to find that premature public knowledge about the evaluation of an employee would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
Hate for this, Caitlin, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins. To find that premature public knowledge about the evaluation of an employee would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage. Please state your name and your.
Caitlin, aye.
David, I.
Warren, aye.
Adam, I.
And Joe, aye.
Jay, this is David. I move that we enter into executive session to discuss the evaluation of an employee under the provisions of 1 VSA 313A3 and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session.
Caitlin, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins to enter into executive session to discuss the evaluation of an employee under the provisions of 1 VSA 313A3 and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session. Please state your name and your vote.
Caitlin, aye.
David, I.
Warren, I. Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. I'm shutting my laptop down.
Me too.
Hey, mate, do we have a motion here? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
A motion to adjourn was made by David Sander and seconded by who?
Kate.
Caitlin, okay. Have a good evening, everyone.
Did you guys?
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.